Hello and welcome to Casablanca Chess Day 2, a rapid event featuring Magnus, Carlsen, Hikaru Nakamura, Vishy and Bassem, but it has a bit of a twist. Daniel, the players don't get to start from the starting position, but they get thrown into unfamiliar territory. How do we like the format so far?
It's an interesting, innovative new format, Jan. The players get a choice of 3 positions taken from World Championship matches across the years. They have to vote on the position that they want to play. Then they set up that position by making the initial moves, and then off we go.
Yeah, it seems like the audience so far is enjoying it. Just not a lot of Berlin Walls or Queen's Gambits, but we get some fresh stuff. Although we've seen if the players get to choose, they still find a way to make it slightly boring. So fortunately, for round number 4, which is the first round of the day, they didn't have a say in it, but the position was picked by somebody else. Shall we look at how the whole thing works?
Let's do it.
The Casablanca chess tournament features one of the more unique formats of any event on the chess calendar. 4 of the world's top players representing 4 different continents will compete in a double round robin with rapid time controls. The twist: each round, players will begin with a starting position selected from a historically significant game. The double round robin format ensures each player will play every other player twice, for a total of 6 games. For 4 of these games, games 1, 2, 4, and 5, a position will be chosen from a pool of 18 positions just before each round. The remaining 2 positions, games 3 and 6, will be determined by the audience through an online poll. Each game will begin from an equal position with white to play, and each position has been chosen from between moves 6 and 15 of the historical game. No positions were selected from matches that the players have played in. The player with the best overall performance will be crowned the winner of the inaugural Casablanca chess tournament.
Okay, so I hope you guys understood that 3 more games to go today. And yesterday we've seen a certain Magnus Carlsen in pretty good shape. Daniel Naroditsky, do you think anybody can stop him today?
I think a lot will depend on the first game. Carlsen played that magnificent final game against Hikaru Nakamura. It could have gone either way. It was a sharp position, but Magnus found some money moves. He crushed Vishy in the first game. He stands an entire point ahead of Hikaru Nakamura. We will have to see a turnaround for Hikaru, Vishy or the local favorite Bassem, the doctor, to catch up to the GOAT.
Yeah, Magnus a full point ahead. He will face Vishy once again in today's first game, while Hikaru gets the black pieces against Bassem. I'm not quite sure what to expect as usual. A lot depends on the starting position, but that's also Magnus Carlsen's superpower. Feels like he can play any position well. It doesn't matter which opening it is. His chess education is so complete that it's very, very hard to really catch him off guard.
Yeah, there are some videos out there of Magnus being quizzed on, various historical positions and themes and endgame studies, and he basically knows everything under God's blue sky. Like, either he's seen the position or it's in a file that he's made, a decade ago, or Seaman Agdestein showed it to him when Magnus was 7 years old at his first Oslo training camp. It's basically impossible to get this guy off his guard and off his knowledge base.
Yeah, it goes to show that maybe instead of clicking on Stockfish, I should have spent my formative years reading chess books, because he's not such a clicker, but he just knows his way around everywhere, and of course he's one of a kind. His brain put it together in a very special way. But let's get to the starting position of round number 4, which has been pre-selected by WGM Anna Burtasova, the press officer for this event, and WGM Dana Reisnitze, Vidis, and I hope I'm saying this right, deputy chair of the management board. Which position did they choose here? We can see our 3 choices.
I think I have an inkling, Jan, of which position their eyes are gravitating toward. It's like asking, do you want a chocolate chip cookie? Do you want to go into school and take a long math test? Or do you want to, I don't know, wake up at 4 a.m. and go running in the cold? I think Alekai and Ava, that French position, looks mighty juicy. But hey, the choice is not mine. So what choice did they end up making?
You are absolutely correct. They went with position number 2, the Alekai Ove from their World Championship match in 1935, almost 100 years ago. And yeah, that looks extremely unbalanced and dynamic, also why they chose it. Do you know this position? It looks vaguely familiar. I'm not a big French player, but I've seen this position before.
I'm not a big French player either. Definitely it's got the contours of a French, that queen on h6, the ruined pawn structure on the queen side, a typical win hour, bishop b4 French, knight c3, bishop b4 French consequence. But it's kind of like the Karpov-Kasparov game yesterday, where you kind of know it's a Sicilian. It smells like a Sicilian, looks like a Sicilian, feels like a Sicilian, but you don't know exactly what kind of Sicilian it was.
Yeah, I think that one we can probably reconstruct once we have the board. It looks like it was this Vinaver, and then white didn't push the e-pawn forward, but went pawn to a3, and then for some pawn grabbing operation with queen g4 and queen takes g7. I'm very curious, especially these well-educated guys like Magnus and also Vishy. They might actually have analyzed that position at some point, because if you consider playing the Wiener, I think you end up there more or less by force, no?
Well, here's the thing. The win hour is extremely common, knight c3, bishop b4. Now, this fourth move, a3, it's a good visualization exercise for people in the chat to ask themselves, well, what is the main move in that position? Can you answer that question in your head? The main move is not a3, but Alekai experimented with various sidelines, and I know that people like Magnus experiment with various sidelines on as early as the fourth move, knight g2, a3. The main move is e5 there, so definitely not impossible that they analyze this.
Then again, as we know, it's roughly equal and it's a mess, so I would expect, even if players have some familiarity with it, that they will be on their own very, very quickly. Not every day you have a white queen on h6 on move number 8. This match, Alekai over in 1935, that's the one over won, right? Because I think Alekai was world champion and then over challenged him, and very surprisingly, he won the first match, which I think was this one, then lost the title back to Alekai different times.
Yeah, Max Irva, very interesting. I think his full name was Machgielis Irva. Oh my gosh, Bick is going to skewer me during the break for my pronunciation. In Russian, we say Ava. Max Ava. He was, I think, a math teacher, and he's sometimes known as like the only quote unquote like amateur who became a world champion. Again, quote unquote. But it was back in a time where you could do other things. You could pursue other endeavors and still rise to a high level in chess. Irva was a very strong player, put in a lot of contributions to the development of positional thinking, and you do not beat Alexander Alekai in a match by accident.
I think he was underrated, because I think he's commonly considered one of the weaker world champions. At some point I sat down and studied some of his games, and especially what he was doing with white had a very, very modern flavor, and he won some very nice games against Alekai in the Slav in that match, I recall. And as you said, to beat Alekai, who I think everybody rate incredibly highly, no matter what Alekai's shape was then, you need to be a special player. And he was a very stable top 5 player in the world for quite a long time, which is pretty impressive if your day job is teaching math to kids.
Yeah, I mean, what else was this guy doing? And I looked up the position, and it first occurred in 1866. There was one game in 1866, And then once in 1934, and Alekhine was the fourth player to reach this position against Eva. The fifth game to reach this position was Ragozin versus Mikhail Botvinnik. So when you look at the games of these old masters, these old world champions, they were really ahead of their time, Jan. They often played essentially modern openings, because if you sort by most recent game, Nepo versus Galchenko, Morozevich, Nepomniachtchi, Shigurov from 2015. So these guys knew what they were doing, 100 plus years ago.
Yeah, that line very much did stick around, and I feel there's a big jump somewhere. Steinitz, no offense, but his openings didn't really hold up to modern standards. Then Lasker wasn't that well known as an opening guru, although he played some interesting stuff. But starting with Capablanca, Ayechin, 1927, and now this match, the games very much look like modern Grandmaster games. They just really, really knew what they were doing. Speaking of modern Grandmasters, we see some of them taking a seat at the board. Did they get handed the score sheets already?
I think they're about to be. Those sheets of paper contain the notation that they will be playing on the board. A little smile by Bassem Amin. Hope they got their soccer watching in. The Premier League final was today. That is why the round starts later. It's not because the commentators needed to sleep. Unfortunately, now it conflicts with the Knicks-Pacers final game. But I will be recording that. And the most important thing is Nuggets and Timberwolves. That's at 8:30, so I'll be able to catch that live. And Casablanca chess. What more can you ask from a Sunday?
That one we will make, but this tournament will interfere with my busy NBA schedule. No idea what Jalen Brunson's going to be up to in that game 7. Still, it is worth it, because we get to see Magnus, Hikaru, and Vishy and Bassem battling it out in this new format, which is kind of fun. I was a bit skeptical if it would be serious, but of course they're taking it very, very seriously. These guys are competitors, and the positions aren't so ridiculous, except when we get to choose, that you don't get to see normal chess games. So I'm enjoying it so far.
It's a nice tournament. It's a friendly venue. The players are nice to each other. There's camaraderie, but make no mistake, they're not phoning it in. They're not just sitting down and let's just make some random moves. We saw it yesterday in Magnus versus Hikaru. They were treating this like a serious, classical rapid game. As you see the handshake there, a wild Magnus Carlsen appears, adjusts his pieces. He'll have the black side of this win our French. The Urva side against Vishy, Alexander Alekhine, Anand.
Yeah, that's what they call him. And it does clearly indicate Magnus taking this seriously. He is late, which is the world champion's privilege. Kasparov also used to be late to sometimes avoid the paparazzi, sometimes maybe also to just have his opponents sit there and stew in fear of what the champ will come up with. I keep calling Magnus world champion. I know he isn't, but he is rapid and blitz world champion and still the world number 1. How does it work for you? Have you accustomed to the new world order of Magnus no longer being official world champion? I'm still not fully.
No. It's almost like when the new year happens and you write 2023 on a sheet of paper. I was doing some chess.com video recordings a couple of months ago, and I just kept I was narrating a game of Magnus, and I just kept world champion, world champion, world champion. And this is no offense to Dingley Ren. It's just we're so used to it. It's been the case for 10 years. He's still the GOAT. It's no malicious intent to Ding or Gukesh or anybody, as the positions have been reached. And okay, C5 has been played. Wait a second. They both played their moves instantly. And it's the same move. And it's the move that Urva played. Or no?
No, C5, I think they've still been given, so White
starts with White to move. Okay, I apologize. Because I was like, wow, they both know this position. No, it is White to play in the initial position. And Alexander Alekhine responded with knight to e2, protecting the pawn on d4, which I think is a very reasonable move. Maybe the only move.
Yeah, that is by far the main move. I cheated a bit and switched on the computer once we heard this was going to be the position. And it says knight e2 or d takes c5 are both equal. D takes c5, a bit counterintuitive, ruining that pawn structure, going for the triple pawns. But Compy said that was an option as well. But knight e2, I would expect, is what you choose here, being thrown into it.
Wow. I see a Robert Fischer versus Robert Byrne game from 1966. Fischer played knight e2, and then Black responded knight b to d7. Oh, and the handshakes, I guess Bassem and Hikaru Nakamura shook hands there, but Bassem is already thinking about his move. Yeah, DC getting the Irish pawns, Jan, harder move for me personally to play, although it does open the D file.
That is the official title, right, for triple C or F pawns. I always get heat from Irish viewers whenever I say it, but it's what it's called. It's not our fault.
It's like the Irish goodbye. Have you heard of that phrase, Jan? The Irish goodbye. It's when you are in a group of people you don't want to be in, and so you have to go to the bathroom, like you're in a restaurant, and then you end up leaving the restaurant. I don't know if the people in the chat recognize this, but knight e2 has been played by Mr. Anand, and understandably so.
Yeah, covers the pawn, and also the c3 pawn, taking the sting out of any queen a5 ideas. The drawback is it blocks in the bishop on f1, but you can't have everything. Now, big choice for Black once again. During my research operation, I saw all kinds of moves popping up on my screen. I think you mentioned knight bd7 was played recently. Computer liked the very direct c takes d4, once again a bit counterintuitive, undoubling these pawns, and after c takes d4 to go knight c6, and then even try to play for a quick e5, white goes c3. But I'm not sure that's Magnus' style. I wouldn't be surprised if he went knight. Did he play knight bd7 yet? He did already.
He did, and this was Jan Nepomniachtchi's move against Anand Sigurov. I'm a simple man. My initial question was, why not knight to c6? So let's dig in a little bit, show some lines, maybe give people some context as to what's going on. Let's see if we can make sense of this very unbalanced position. So my understanding is that knight c6 is bad, or maybe not accurate because of bishop to g5. Jan, and this move doesn't win the knight because Black always has this very important resource, rook to g6. But now the queen is dropped back to h4. White is threatening knight f4. And maybe Black can make this work concretely with the engine. Yeah, apparently. Oh my goodness. Look at this line. C takes d4. C takes d4. Knight takes d4. Von castle. Yeah, that's a legal move. Queen a5. I'm not going to pretend that I know what's going on. This actually hits the bishop. And after bishop f6, queen takes a3. Of course, chess is a draw. To the surprise of exactly no one, this ends in a perpetual check. So that is just one line which illustrates the complexity of the position, how crazy things can get here. Let's go back to the live position after knight bd7.
Yeah, knight bd7 on the board. The drawback of knight bd7 is it takes the pressure off White's center of the d4 pawn to some extent. So maybe White now has time to redeploy that knight directly. And since d4 is no longer hanging, place a move like knight g3 and try to develop, quote-unquote, normally with bishop e2 short castles.
Mm-hmm. Oh, yeah. You can go that way as well. I forgot you can go east as well as west.
Sometimes you gotta go east. I don't like Black's position, actually. How's Black gonna develop? Like b6, bishop b7? Or what's he gonna do after, let's say, knight g3?
So I'm pretty sure that in Alekhine's notes to the game, he called knight b to d7 an inaccuracy, and he did play knight g3. And then he called Arva's next move, rook g6, an inaccuracy, and said, after this loss of time, Black's game becomes very difficult. I'm pretty impressed that Alekhine even touched the games from this match because he lost it. That shows a winner's mentality, looking over games from a very painful experience.
Yeah, true researcher. They always say you learn the most from losses, but I don't know how it is for you. Sometimes I find the strength to look at losses, but very often you just go, you don't want to touch that anymore.
He won this game, but he lost the World Championship match. And to me, like the wins from a match like that would be even more painful to look at because you're like, well, I outplayed my opponent here. Why couldn't I do it in the other games? But he lost this match by a point, and I can see what he's saying. So, wait a second. Rook g6, queen h4, rook g4. The queen will, I assume, drop back to h3, and the rook will stick out like a sore thumb.
Yeah, another problem of this knight on d7, that the bishop on c8 no longer stares down the queen on h3, while then white can get back to business with bishop e2, short castles. Oh, it looks tough to play. Once again, the wise computers, they don't like this knight b7.
I don't like black's position, Jan.
I'm with you. And maybe Magnus's culture didn't do him a favor here. Maybe he knew knight b7 was the move that was played and trusted good old Uwe, but he led him astray here.
Yeah, you know what they say, never trust a world champion. I guess that means Magnus wouldn't be trusting himself as he plays queen to a5. Obviously, hitting the pawn on c3, and bishop d2 is the only logical move. I mean, you're obviously not going to go bishop to b2 because that allows c takes d4. I wonder what Magnus's follow-up is to bishop to d2, because then you get an additional headache of, potentially a move like c4. I mean, what is the queen doing there? Are you going to drop it onto a4, which is a pretty typical idea in the French? There's a line where black plays an early queen a5, queen a4. My friend Peter calls it the we know open for business variation, because black just tries to shut down the entire board.
Yeah, I've seen Richard Rappert do that more than once with his close center, queen a5, queen a4. It looks excessively greedy here to use the queen to chase that c2 pawn. But maybe that's his idea. What else could be his point?
Yeah, I'm looking this position up. So knight bd7, knight g3. Was queen a5 ever played? It has been played. And actually, Nepo played queen to d2. That move didn't occur to me at all. Yes, the position after bishop to d2 still has a bunch of games in the database. As early as 1958. David Anton? Wow.
Nothing new under the French sun.
Oh, sorry, not David Anton. Some 2600 correspondence player named Anton played the move b6 in this position in 1989. That's all I have to say.
2600 correspondence in 1989 sounds pretty impressive. Back then, you couldn't switch on your engine and be strongest correspondence. Have you ever tried correspondence? I can't do it.
I respect it. I don't have the patience for it. I guess I'm not in the right generation. I just cannot. I mean, you spend like a day looking at a single position. And I think the misconception about modern correspondence play on is that people just plug it into Stockfish and let it sit for a day. There is a collaboration that goes on where the human, the good correspondence player, fills the gap of the engine. So it's not that they always make the top move. A lot of the times they do, but sometimes at like extremely high depths in complex positions, the engine can actually be short-sighted, and you actually need to understand what its limitations are. I don't have the patience for that at all.
Me neither, although I've always suspected correspondence players that's their narrative, that they say, no, the engine doesn't get it, you have to do deep research, and in reality, you just let Stockfish run for 8 hours and play the first line. Like, how bad could it be? Is it going to lose a game if it thinks for 8 hours in every position? I find it very hard to picture nowadays, but I'm very ignorant about it. I don't know.
Listen, my main time control is Hyperbullet, so I don't think it's a surprise to anybody. Let's go to the two-board view. Okay, so on the other board on the left side, Bassem
the other game is very different.
The other move. He played DC.
Yeah. As I mentioned, the computer likes this move, but I didn't expect it to show up on the board here. But Bassem says a pawn is a pawn.
Yeah.
So DC, rook g6, queen e3, queen a5.
Rook b1, NBD7, and this is position on the board. I don't know. I prefer the way that Vishy played.
Black, doesn't it?
Yeah, I mean these Irish pawns aren't faring too well, and I mean You can try to play bishop to b5, but then you have to deal with rook takes g2, then knight f6 to d5. This is a very nasty idea, actually, hitting the queen on e3 and hitting the pawn on c3. So it's just something about this feels off. It's funny that both Hikaru's and Magnus's queens are on a5, but it feels like the queen is doing a lot more work in this case.
Yeah. Especially, I don't know, this might be good for compies, but it looks so hard for white to play. Even now, it's a tough decision. Bishop b5, rook b5, knight e2. None of the moves look particularly tempting to me. Maybe rook b5, now that you've said, grabbing the pawn, might as well keep it, but it's so materialistic.
Knight to e2 has been played by Bassem, reinforcing the pawn on c3. And, well, the instinct move, I guess, is to play knight takes c5 or queen takes c5. Who does a queen trade favor in a position like this?
I was wondering, if knight takes c5, can I go knight f4 to threaten rook b5 and hit the rook on g6? Maybe there's some tactical troubles.
There's a funny line. Yeah, knight takes c5. I'll put this on the board. Knight f4. Okay, for the sake of simplicity, let's say black just drops the rook back to g8, rook to b5. And knight d3 check is a cool tactical try, but even queen takes c3 or bishop takes c3 should do the trick. Black has no desperado. This is important for newer players to understand. If you take the rook, white's queen takes the queen, and well, there's nothing on d3 to capture. So that doesn't work. What about queen takes c5?
That's probably the way to go.
Yeah, I mean, you could also leave this pawn on c5. You could play
wondering.
I don't know, b6 is a move I've seen in these types of positions.
Yeah, that's what these modern players do. They say pawns don't matter, but I want to develop my queen side ASAP. I'm very curious what Hikaru will choose. I promised my first coach ever to never play the French, so I have zero experience in these structures because I did honor that promise. But yeah, I've certainly seen people play b6 in similar positions as well.
Yeah, queen takes
But
c5.
he did go queen takes c5, the quote-unquote normal move.
I mean, my
should just exchange, right?
Would be to exchange.
Queens, bishop e3.
Bishop e3. Yeah, exactly.
Stabilize a bit, then the knight can jump maybe to f4, white can play c4. There's some stability. Doesn't look too bad.
Looks like to use the phrase that lazy commentators like to use, dynamic equality, which is what you say when there's just like a weird position. You don't really know what the evaluation is, but you know the eval bar is about hovering over equality. So you just say it's dynamically equal.
Yeah. We used to have all these phrases like unclear, complicated, dynamic equality. Well, nowadays, yeah, it's all 0-0 or plus 0-10. So all these descriptive terms have been replaced by cruel numbers. Bishop e3
Look at us.
On the
Look
board.
at us. Let's go. Calling all of Bassem moves.
The knight is under attack. I guess you go b6. Yeah, I mean, bishop c5. Black shouldn't worry about. White's not gonna play it. Yeah, b6 played.
Let's get to the other game. I think we're going to get this sort of dynamically equal endgame for a while, and then when there's a critical moment or a big mistake, we'll zero in further. But a lot of things have happened in the other game between Vishy and Magnus, so we can start from the two-board view. I'm looking at that board, and things are getting really spicy. And look at the parallels between two games. Now there's a black knight on c5 in both cases. Of course, the queens are still on the board. And my impression is that would favor Vishy. He's just played the move bishop to e2, preparing to castle kingside. The queen side is just a complete wasteland. And listen, if he castles kingside, look at black's king. Where is the monarch going to find shelter in the long run?
Yeah, Magnus went for this move we saw coming, but queen a5 and queen a4, spending to tempi, putting his queen on a4, eyeing the c2 pawn. I'm not sure if he really wants to take it right now. It feels like a lot. Because, yeah, poor king in the center. Where can it go? Bishop d7, long castles, but even that does not feel like such a nice home for the king, does it?
I'm always afraid of getting checkmated somehow when the b8 square is controlled like this and you don't have the dark squares. I mean, it's not out of the realm of possibility. All it takes is like a knight on e7. But do you have a choice? I mean, can you go, king f8, king g8 doesn't look appetizing. White's h-pawn can run up the board. And h4 is a very, very serious possibility in this position. Magnus says, I don't care. Give me some pawns. I didn't have enough cereal for breakfast.
Yeah. If the king is bad anyway, might as well grab some material. Vishy Anand. He's got a castle, right? You don't want to allow knight d3 with the check.
And this is an important detail. Let's say white castles, and black plays the move knight to d5, trying to separate the queen and the bishop. I assume that Vishy's idea is queen to d6. And after queen takes d2, oh my gosh, Jan, this gets really, really spicy. If you go bishop e5 check, I think you lose.
There's some tactics. Bishop d7, knight e4.
Knight e4, and now maybe rook takes g2 check. Oh my goodness. My idea was like king takes g2, knight f4, but apparently that's not the best move. Maybe you can just play knight takes e4. Bishop takes d7 check, king to d8, and this is a very important situation because the queen is under attack. And so anywhere the bishop goes, black simply captures the queen. So instead of bishop b5 check, apparently there's a move which keeps equality. Maybe it's just queen takes knight. And again, you get this wild position. Rook takes g3. This would win for black were it not for this very important intermediate move, bishop b5 check. And then white picks up the rook. Very interesting position.
It is a mess. But yeah, I don't see an alternative to castles, really. So that should happen. And then Magnus will have to figure it out if he wants to go for this knight d5. If he can see another way to play.
The computer move was not on my radar at all. Queen to e5. I mean, queen to d6 I can understand. Here.
I don't get it. If knight d3 check then takes... Queen takes? Why is that good?
I think Vishy is about to make a move, and I'll bet a silver dollar it's castle short.
Yeah.
It is.
There we go.
So, knight d5. And by the way, on the other board, Bassem is going down in flames. He is now worse, solidly worse in an endgame. We don't have to dive into that game. I'm just kind of updating people.
Oh, but he took on c5. Better. We told him he shouldn't have done that.
That's right.
They never listen.
They never do. I mean, eventually they'll learn. Maybe it'll take a couple of Casablanca chess editions. Queen d6 on the board. Once again, Jan, we're calling the action. And I think we will get the position after queen takes d2, queen takes c5. Unless Vishy gets tempted by this check.
Vishy Anand played 2 World Championship matches against Magnus Carlsen after gaining the title in one of my favorite matches of all time in 2008 against Kramnik. There was a big clash. Vishy's showing some really special ideas there in the opening and all over the place. Then he defended it twice in 2010, was it, against Topalov, and in 2012 against Gelfand. But then the young kid from, where's it from? Bærum, Norway?
Bærum, I think is right.
The title. Yeah.
That 2008 match, that was played in Bonn, right?
Yeah.
The birthplace of an obscure composer named Ludwig van Beethoven.
Not familiar.
Nah, he's kind of a shadowy figure. He wrote a few symphonies. But that was a long time ago. I'm deaf to it. Okay, bishop b5 check. or queen takes c5, or even knight takes e4 has to be considered. Unfortunately, the sacrifices don't work. Vishy just has to take that knight and save some time on his clock.
That's what he's gonna do. But he's thinking about it.
Come on, Vishy, take the knight. He's down to 5.5 minutes. And the bigger question to me is does Magnus take another pawn on c3? I'm almost afraid to ask. But in for a penny, in for a pound?
Trying to figure this out. Yeah, Vishy does go queen takes c5. Queen takes c3. Might as well no challenge the queen. If bishop b5 check, black has to go bishop d7 then.
But no, but scary.
Takes queen b5, queen c6. Scary, but maybe.
Scary, but it's like when you think you're in the worst turbulence of your life and the pilot comes on and it's like, all right, ladies and gentlemen, just take your seats. It's going to be a few bumps. Magnus seems like he's got everything under control, but hey, you've got everything under control until you don't. Of course, you could also choose bishop to d7, but their knight takes c4 again has to be calculated with the knight jumping into d6. Again, I think that black slithers away. But it's one of those positions. The side that blunders first loses.
The price of a move is so high. I'm not smart enough to calculate bishop d7. Like bishop h5 is there to get the bishop out of the way. And then go knight takes e4 as well. Black can throw in some rook c8. Oof. Gonna be very tough to navigate this turbulence. But Magnus, I guess he's usually in business class, just comfortably stretched out. He's not even gonna notice it.
I think he's going to take on c3. And I think in that position, bishop b5 check is kind of the automatic move. But remember that white can also be worse. If white's initiative fizzles out, pieces get traded, you're going to get something like Bassem has, where, the queens come off the board, he has bad pawn structure, and, suddenly you're like, where's my attack? So apparently the best move here is, again, non-obvious, Jan. It's queen to b5 check, which looks like a very awkward move. Like, why would you give the check with your queen? The point is to meet queen c6 with queen to b2, and that creates a double threat. I'm going to put this on the board. Very instructive idea of the queen coming into h8 and the bishop pinning the queen to b5. So black has to go back to c3. And guess where this is going?
Oh,
just kidding.
Repeat time.
Nope. Vishy played bishop to c4. Another very enterprising move, setting up the potential for a discovered attack and reinforcing the threat of knight takes e4. The action is on, ladies and gentlemen.
Yeah, queen b5, queen b2 looked incredibly tough to spot, very computerish, because you feel like you have the queen on c5 covering the dark squares, while the bishop can take care of the light squares. But does that mean Vishy is worse now? It looks like he's doing all right, but apparently black has some resources.
Well, oh my goodness, bishop to d7.
Uh-huh.
Knight takes e4, rook takes g2. Well, if knight e4, there's rook takes g2, king takes g2, knight to f4 check. Now, don't go king h1 because you get mated. You have to go to g1. Now, queen g7 is wrong because the knight can drop back to g3, but black can make a draw with knight h3 check. Beautiful
it's just
drawing pattern.
King h1, queen f3.
Is mate, so you have to go up to g2, and black goes back to f4. So again, this is just one possibility. And bishop d7 has been played. But Jan, you are expecting a different move from Vishy?
No, I thought maybe he has time to go rook c1, but I am not sure whatsoever. Where does the black queen go? Queen e5 just?
Queen e5 maybe, yeah.
Yeah, there's no great
follow-up there. Maybe, but it feels a little bit sketchy there. Black can take on Bassem. Yeah. The queen can drop back further, perhaps. And also black can b6 can be played at some point.
Maybe that repetition is best played, knight e4, rook g2, as it often is. I
think it is. And I think Vishy just has to get... The question is, does he see the draw, or maybe he's scared to play knight takes e4 because he thinks black has a different move? I mean, does black have a different move, or... No, I think you have to go rook takes g2. Otherwise, the knight jumps into d6, and black's position collapses.
I was even wondering after 94, rook g2, if king h1 is possible, trying to get in 96 if the queen moves. But probably it also ends in a perpetual after queen f3, knight d6. At least doesn't
King
look like white is more than it.
f8? Maybe there. I can try to run to the king side.
Trying to lose. Yeah. You're right.
Although there, knight f5, knight h4 even. I'm not going to pretend to know what's happening.
Yeah. Chess is very tough.
Exactly.
Fortunately, these guys are playing it. We should remind everybody that after this round, first of all, stay tuned, because Hikaru might join us for the interview. And also, the chat can vote on the starting position for the next round, for round number 5. So check your YouTube and Twitch. The voting will be open once this round is over, and you guys can decide what they get to play next.
Yeah, but Bassem is still kicking, still holding on, still trying to survive. But Hikaru just has exactly the type of endgame that he thrives in. His conversion, usually so accurate. But let's stay on this game. This is the climax. This is the moment where Magnus, I think, is about to take on G2. What a lovely perpetual. What a high level game. Both players really putting in a lot of effort. It's not easy to prosecute a complicated position like this so accurately, and yet both players have managed to do that. Really hats off both to Vishy and to Magnus today.
Sometimes it does end in a quick draw, but it's not for lack of trying. This is just raw skill at display, both sides in a position where the price of a move is so high. Making the best moves, then can happen. It's the nature of chess, but will still be a very cool game.
I really enjoyed this position. Well done by the organizers, and well done by Anna and Dana to choose this position. This was exactly the right level of heat. All right, it wasn't too crazy. It was complicated enough where the players knew some ideas, but still had to think independently, and there was a lot of room for mistakes. Just the right amount of entertainment. And let's see if Magnus goes for rook takes g2. He's taking his time, maybe calculating king to h1, making sure that queen f3 still does the job there, but it does, and Vishy will take the rook.
Has he played it? Still no. But there he comes.
Now he does.
Rook takes g2 on the board. Vishy will take a moment, but now he takes instantly. Red drawing pattern. Notice knight h3, knight f4 back. You don't see it all the time because the queen needs to control the third rank, which typically it doesn't. But
no,
it works beautifully.
Don't go knight e2 check instead, because the white knight actually defends the queen, and a draw has been agreed. It's a repetition. Let's see. Can we listen in?
Let's listen in.
Yeah. Oh, no, sorry. Even queen f3. Yes, queen f3. Knight d6, king f8. Knight f5, king g8. Knight h4. But you take in queen f4. Queen f4, queen h3, 8. e5, queen h8. King h2, yeah, knight queen g4. I had the wrong position in my mind. I thought the king was ending up on g4, and then queen g4, and knight f4. No, so it's still there. No, I thought rook a1 was very strong, and then I saw queen e5. Yeah, you're just worried. I missed this guy. But did I have something? No, I thought you were going to go queen e3 instead of queen f4 and like queen c6, bishop e2. Queen takes c4. I thought it's the other idea. Okay. Not to play c4 and keep the bishops. Yeah, I thought like trading queens somehow. I thought maybe a little bit better. This is what Keras put training. Keras put training, right? Isn't it the one game Keras won? Or am I misremembering? Sure. I know there was I think it's 1948.
It's like, I don't care us about that.
He lost every game. He lost 4, he won 1. What else could it be? I couldn't think of another game. It's not really Russian Spassky and all. Random Swiss level winning game, I thought maybe. Yeah, I didn't think of that. I thought it was.
Oh, they're both off on that one.
So many decisive games,
They're trying to identify the game. They don't know which game it comes from.
But I start with rook fd1
We do, they don't.
I guess for winning Keras in Botvinnik Smyslov. Botvinnik, big French player.
We should go to the other game, by the way.
Alright. I tried to understand what they were analyzing. It sounded like they were talking about the very line. We were talking about Rook G2, King H1, but that confirmed it doesn't do white much good. So let's...
But look at this, Jan. Bassem is coming back. He was, dead to rights, and suddenly it's a fight. He's got a minute on his clock, but he's managed to whip up some very serious counterplay against Black's king.
Pawn to F4. Yeah, this doesn't look straightforward at all, right? Knight G5 check looming. What's Hikaru do? Just H6 to stop that?
I think so. I mean, the blue arrow is not mine. That's the engine arrow, indicating that Knight G4 is an important move. But it's not necessarily intuitive to me to give that check. I don't really see what it does after something like King to G2. Bassem managed to get his Rook to B7. Black had this big pawn phalanx in the center, but now it looks a heck of a lot less impressive. And Black is under attack. I mean, you could get checkmated here.
Yeah, this looks like most of my Blitz games, where I get a decent position sometimes, and then they manage to mix it, and all of a sudden you're sitting there calculating Knight G5 check, Fe5, the Rook is active, things get out of hand, and boom, checkmate.
Where's my advantage? Did I leave it on the airplane?
Yeah. Then again, it is Hikaru Nakamura. With the black pieces, he does excel. Calculating these
check.
Short, important lines, and he does go Knight G4 check. Best move.
And Bassem has 1 minute on his clock. There is a 10-second increment, folks, but still, imagine playing an endgame this complex against Hikaru, the worst person to have acute time pressure as Bassem slides his king to G2. The natural move, apparently not the best. Can Hikaru just take on A3 and then intend to sacrifice the exchange on G5?
Wow.
No, Rook to D8.
He goes Rook D8.
Whoa! Allowing Knight G5?
What's his point? He wants... computer
F6
doesn't like
King
that
G6.
move at all. He wants King F6, Knight H7, King G6. Sneak into safety.
Wait, but Knight G5, King F6, Bassem could go H3.
Yes. Rook D2 is just a check. Yeah.
Oh, he's got Rook E2.
Oh, he's got Rook E2, stopping Rook D2.
Yeah, I didn't see the draw there by force.
Giving Hikaru another chance to play H6 if he so chooses. But no, he doesn't care. He just takes on A3. Literally does not care about that check. Knight G5, King F6.
Yeah, there's not enough time. Bassem just does not have enough time to figure out this position. There's so much going on here. And the main thing, I'm going to show this with an arrow and that board in the center. Knight takes H7. There's no perpetual. Black slides the king to G6. And you don't have this very important check on F8 because the rook guards that square. That may be all she wrote, Jan.
What can you do if H3? Tough for me to pronounce H3. Knight E3, King F2, but then we don't really have any threats.
Yeah. H4 has been played.
H4 played. Ugh.
No.
That allows the knight to chill on G4. This can't be it either.
No, this is collapse, unfortunately, for the doctor.
What do you do when the doctor collapses? You call another doctor?
Yeah, that's not the right person you want to collapse. I'm actually voting for H6 here. If I'm Hikaru, just force that knight either to banish itself to H7 or Hikaru plays E takes F4 first. Bassem is going to recapture on F4, I assume. And still, probably black is spoiled for choice. H6 is possible here. You can infiltrate with one of the rooks. There's a lot of roads that lead to Casablanca here. Or Capablanca in this case.
Yeah, this looks very Capablanca-ish already. H6 and squeeze out the win. Yeah, tough game for Bassem, I mean, I felt like, of course, he's just a top player, but these very random positions, because he's such a system player. We talked yesterday about how he likes his King's Indian structures to get thrown into such a non-standard thing against Hikaru, who's a little more accustomed to playing anything under the sun. Maybe it was a rough spot for him as well.
Yeah, I think you're exactly right. It's very important for Bassem to get those, King's Indian attack structures. He's a beast in those close positions. And, these top players, they just spent so much time investigating so many different types of openings. You can really see the mastery on display here as Hikaru has one more hurdle to cross, knight to e6. Still trying, still fighting, still dodging and dancing and diving. But it's not going to be enough for Bassem. I think even rook to g8, rook takes f5, and king h4, the king joins the party, and black is going to get checkmated one way or the other. Same thing.
I liked rook d1 with the same idea. You have rook f5, king h4, and the entering king is safe, as they say. Then rook g3, checkmate is there. Well, knight g7, king g6 doesn't save the game either.
Precisely. 10 seconds,
This
it's
is it.
over. Hikaru makes a big step forward.
Yeah, staying close to Magnus Carlsen. If he wins this one, only half a point behind in the standings.
You could even go h5, h4. I mean, white has no threats.
Yeah, that rook on e2 does nothing.
Maybe knight e6, knight f8 actually is, weirdly enough, it's sort of a threat.
Yeah, because the king
rook
can't
a1
escape
also.
to d6.
Rook a1 might set up the mating net.
Just give a bunch of checks with the rooks.
Yeah, check, and then a checkmate on the first rank. I mean, there's so many mating patterns with the knight. Literally anything wins.
Knight e3 also good. And knight f1. Where's the mate? King g2.
Rook g3 and e3.
He just wants rook g3, e3 cashing in, which is more than good enough. Yeah.
Yep.
This is it. Reminder, the voting for the game number 5 positions will open any moment because this is pretty much over.
King h1 you have to try, but it's over.
Yeah. Give Amin, nice King's Indian.
Rook h3, king g1, knight e3. Oh, that is gorgeous. Rook f1, mate. Look at the way that he handles his attacking forces in a handshake. Bassem resigns. Hikaru takes the first game of the day with the black pieces. Well done. Applause from the audience.
Nice game. Let's listen in.
I saw Vishy play it. I think is the move. Good praise.
First position, yeah?
Yeah, I think so. But I mean, I don't know. I feel like white should be fine, but probably just avoid this endgame.
Yeah.
Probably not bishop b5. I mean, so I think even this endgame, if you take on c5, is fine. But I think the specific one with the knights is probably just bad. I mean, okay, so
Yeah,
not
knight on
terrible,
g3,
but
it's much better. But
yeah, with knight on g3. Yeah. But I think the knight's endgame should always be better for me, basically. Whereas I think if you keep one of the bishops at least, it should be fine. I don't know. Hard to judge.
Right. Hikaru sounds in control. So the voting is now open for the position to start game number 5 with. Let's have a look. What do we have?
Okay. Kasparov-Karpov in a double fianchetto English. We have Ushen and Huyafan in another sharp d4 opening, and I hope it's white to move in that position. It's white to move in all of the positions, of course. And Zhuzhiner versus Kostanyuk in a ultra sharp Slav, where white sacrifices a pawn for the bishop pair, are your choices, ladies and gentlemen.
Yeah, we'll keep an eye on it. Game number 1, I think, is a very famous game where Kasparov needed to win, and he played this very slow opening, trying to keep the pieces on the board. Let's see what people are choosing. Game number 2, this looks like a very modern position. some Queen's Indian, some vibes from some Kramnik Leko games. And game number 3 is also a sort of theoretical position. We are being joined by Hikaru Nakamura, who just won a nice game with the black pieces. Hikaru, welcome.
Yeah, it's good to be here with you guys.
First question, Hikaru, did you recognize the position? Were there kind of familiar vibes when you reached it? And which color did you prefer initially?
Yeah, so I mean, I didn't remember a specific game, but I was fairly certain that there was at least one Fisher game with this position. I wasn't sure who it was against, but it rang a bell. Of course,
Burn.
even knowing okay, yeah, but even knowing that, it didn't. That doesn't necessarily mean you know what the right move is. So obviously, I was just trying to find the best moves. I don't know. To me, I actually thought that it was better for white. I felt like it was a little bit easier for white with the 2 bishops. I feel like black is the one who has to prove the equality. So I actually didn't like the position from the black side. I think I would have been much happier from the white side. But I think I got a little bit lucky because I think that my opponent Amin he tried to simplify, and the simplification was just bad in my opinion. I think that even though we both had double pawns, the E pawns were much better than the double C pawns. And I mean, probably could have saved it, but I think it was just kind of going the wrong direction from the moment he played bishop b5 and traded off some bishops.
Yeah, the game was actually Ayechin against Uwe in 1935, but it turns out it's a fairly modern line played in the Fischer game and even some more recent games, so the line did stick around. You were critical of this d takes c5 move initially. No, the computer doesn't hate it, but knight e2 is what people usually chose there.
Yeah, knight e2 is the best move. Yeah, I mean, I had a feeling knight e2 is the right move, and I mean, I was almost certain actually when I got up and I saw Vishy play knight e2. I was like basically certain that knight e2 was the right move. So yeah, d takes c5. I mean, probably wasn't best, but I think that. I mean, the thing is, after dc5, my moves became too easy. Actually, like I mean, I had to go queen a5, I had to go knight bd7, and then it's I think pretty. It's more on white to find the best moves. In a rapid game, it's very difficult. And if you play one wrong move, like Amin did, and he just ends up in an endgame, it's just, I think, very hard to play. So I actually think I prefer this from the white side, but I think I got a little bit lucky. And yeah, it was good to get a win, though, at least.
Hikaru, can you tell us a little bit about the atmosphere of the tournament? Is this your first time in Morocco? And what are your impressions of the city of Casablanca and your general experience in the tournament so far?
Yeah, so I mean, first things first. Obviously, this is a fairly casual exhibition. You have a lot of fans here who are watching live. You have some cats, you have some pigeons. Probably people were watching the broadcast closely. They probably saw at some point that I was having trouble keeping it together and not laughing because you could hear the pigeon like groaning or croaking or whatever the right word is. So it's kind of amusing. But obviously here, you know, it's a show for the fans certainly, so it's not a big deal. In general, yeah, I mean, it's my first time to Morocco. I've obviously played Gibraltar many times, but I never actually took the boat across to Tangier. So first time in Morocco, I mean, my experience has been very, very pleasant. I've spent some time in Rabat, Marrakesh, and now here in Casablanca, and all 3 cities are great. And I mean, I would sort of just say that it's a good thing to see there's so much interest in chess here in Morocco and in Africa in general. And I'm enjoying the event immensely.
The chat gets to vote for the next position. Do you want to nudge them in any direction? You want a peaceful position, a sharp position? How does it feel in general? What type of positions do you like in this format?
Yeah, you know what's funny? With the exception of the second game, which I think was basically, I mean, it was a dead position basically because I think there's one idea for black, nothing else to do. This d5, which forces an endgame. I am actually getting the impression that from the other three positions now that we've had, that I'm definitely preferring one side over the other. I haven't seen a position where I actually feel like it's a position where I would be happy with both sides, oddly enough. So I don't know what kind of game I actually want. I really don't have a strong preference, but I do think it's interesting because even though all these positions are equal, I definitely in every single one of them, I would say, with the exception of the second game, I'm much happier with one side or the other. Like I would have said the game yesterday, I would have been much happier with black, the one against Magnus. First game, much happier with white. Would have been unhappy, of course, with black in the first game and white in the third game. So it's actually interesting that all the positions seem interesting. I'm not generally just like I'm be happy with white and black.
Well, Hikaru, congrats on your win. 2 more games today. We'll let you get some rest, and good luck in the next game. Thanks for joining us.
Thank you, guys.
All right, that was Hikaru Nakamura Let's have a look at the current standings after 4 games played in the tournament. Magnus Carlsen.
Okay.
Still in the lead.
Okay. Hikaru is hot down his neck, breathing down his neck, and only half a point away. So the next 2 games will decide a lot. And Vishy is not out of the running. And of course, Bassem can play spoiler. It's not all about who wins. It's also about who wins a pivotal game to influence the standings.
Looks like we're set up for 2 crucial decisive games today. First, Magnus with the white pieces against Hikaru in round number 6. And then Denver versus Minnesota in round number 7. Gonna be a long night. Keep voting in the chat for which position you want for round number 5. We're gonna brief break and be back with all the action.
Alright, now for this next problem, Stockfish cannot solve it no matter how long you leave it for. Alright, now for this next problem, Stockfish cannot solve it no matter how long you leave it for. And I also should say it's not technically a forced mating line. There is a way that black can get out, but the resulting position is still winning. Let's look at the most forcing line to start. Knight f6 check. The king does not want to go up here because this would queen with check, so it goes towards the knight. King g7, we check it again. Again, black king is attacking this knight, but it's protected by the bishop. But we can sacrifice the knight here with bishop c2 check. King takes, and now the engine is starting to catch up with where we're at. Now we're free to promote to a queen. But wait, wouldn't promoting to a queen lead to this knight fork on f7 and we'd lose our queen? Yes, but that is all part of the plan. I should say that at this point the engine can figure out that this knight fork is actually the only way to lose. There's only a way to lose right away. Black can play a number of other moves, but this position is technically winning for white. We're up a queen and a piece against 3 pieces. These pawns we can take care of. So let's look at the far more interesting knight fork. Knight f7, and we're not even going to try to protect this queen. We're going to go king e6, let them take it with check, and then the king goes to f5. And now you'll notice we're barricading in this king. This black king cannot go anywhere. All of the squares are cut off. So what we're trying to do at this point is threaten any check, and that would be mate. So we are threatening bishop d1 checkmate. What can black do? They can stop it with e2. Well, we've got ideas. We can go bishop e4, threaten checkmate over there. And the only way they can stop this is by promoting to a knight covering this square. Well, our game is not over yet. Bishop d5, and now we're threatening bishop c4 and checkmate here on d2. Well, black can temporarily stop this, promote to a knight again covering this square. Hang on, we've got still ideas. Bishop b5, threatening checkmate over here. Well, black can give up a knight for nothing, delay the inevitable. Knight c7, protecting this square. That's fine for us. We'll just find another way to do it. Bishop a4, threatening this square, checkmate once again. Now this time, there is nothing black can do to stop this unstoppable action. c4, bishop d1, and all you can do is get some knights in the way to block. But eventually, we find checkmate.
Hi everybody, I'm Grandmaster Yango and I welcome you to my course in Aggressive 1 E4 Repertoire, Part 1. I believe this course is aimed at all levels, which of course is always an easy thing to say. Basically, the approach has been to be as aggressive as possible against the main lines, setting an emphasis on surprise value while still having some soundness in order to pose unique problems. Knight f6. We're going for the most aggressive. Knight to g5, d5, e takes d. Knight a5. Bishop b5 check. That's just the main line. dc, bc. And here I have a bunch of new ideas. after queen to f3. And hopefully this will not only fix my chickenness of not being able to play 1e4 aggressively, but also give you a bunch of fresh ideas when we're done.
Keep me coming back for more. Baby, you're all that I want.
Obviously, don't go and do that, please.
You do whatever you like.
We can't condone anything of the sort.
No, we can't live!
Welcome back to Casablanca Chess, the rapid event over this weekend, where Magnus Carlsen keeps a half-point lead over Hikaru Nakamura. I'm Jan Gustafsson, and I am once again here with Daniel Naroditsky to find out what position they will play next.
Okay, we have three choices. These are the choices. We talked about them briefly before the break. And it appears that Kasparov-Karpov has won by a very thin margin.
That is surprising to me because it's such a quiet position. But the people have chosen. Maybe the big name bonus played a role there. Kasparov-Karpov. Of course. Most famous names on the board, no offense to any of the others, and it's also a well-known game, but the position itself, very slow. No, this is what the doctor likes. He'll be happy.
Yeah, double fianchetto for white, and definitely I wouldn't be surprised if one or more of the players had either that exact position in their career or something very, very similar, because this is still an actively played line. It's not ultra theoretical. You know, the price of a move is not as high as the previous game, and that's exactly the point. I think the players will be very happy to have something where they can settle down, play a long maneuvering game, and here we see the notation. It came out of an English, sort of an English ready cross.
I feel like in the games of young German star Vincent Keimer, he has this position or this type of position in every other white game. So especially nowadays where all these sharp lines are analyzed so deeply and normally end peacefully, feels like white players have sort of reverted back to playing some closed maneuvering positions just to get a chess game, which I, of course, strongly dislike. So hard to force a draw when there's so many pieces on the board.
Yeah, and Hikaru actually has had this position.
Wow.
I'm seeing a 2022 game, but that was the Title Tuesday game. Dominguez or Chavo. Yeah, this is a position which is played very actively up to the present day. So it'll be so interesting to see what level of experience the players have with this position, how they handle this mixture, right, of tactical positions, and then immediately everybody can breathe and they have to play something more positional. It's not easy to keep readjusting to these new demands of the position.
No, I guess they will be happy because this is a position you can play more by hand. The stronger player wins. I have to say, because this game was, when I used to read chess books, this game was always brought up as the example as how you should play in a must-win situation. Kasparov needed to win that game to, I think, even the scores against Karpov and keep his title in 1987. And it certainly led me astray because I always thought, okay, must-win game, you must play something very boring, knight f3, g3, b3, and never worked for me, like giving up any pressure you could put on the opponent. So maybe the result, Kasparov winning that game, led generations of players astray into playing slow stuff in must-wins. I don't know.
Yeah, I mean, I've heard that advice as well from my coach. There's this weird paradox. He said if you want to draw, you want to play one e4 because it tends to lead to more forcing lines, which kind of goes against the conventional wisdom if you think, oh, e4 is a sharp move. But that's not how it works at the high level. My problem with must-win situations was just me having to win a game. I tried everything. It never seemed to make it happen. As we see the players assuming their seats, Hikaru will have the white side of this position. And much like Bassem, I think Hikaru is really happy because he plays these, I mean, everybody knows he plays these knight f3, e3, b3 lines a lot online. He plays it in Title Tuesday, in Rapid. He's very, very experienced in these maneuvering games with double fianchetto.
Yeah, and they even took care that none of the positions chosen were from matches by Magnus or Vishy, not to give them an advantage. But no one scanned Hikaru's Title Tuesday games to see if the position showed up there. So Hikaru very much on home turf in this round. And as mentioned, the Doctor should also be happy with the style of play, although Black versus Magnus, never a reason to celebrate prematurely.
What if one of them gets a move wrong? Do they get penalized if they misread the notation? They play h5 instead of a5?
That should be a
g6
harsh
instead of
penalties.
b6?
Yes.
Agreed.
They have to have the cat that's running around there on their lap the whole game.
Aw. Actually, give me that punishment. I'm a big fan of cats. Okay, there are the positions. Vishy and Hikaru, still a couple of moves to make. And it'll be white to move after knight b to d7. And the first big choice, I always wonder, do you put a pawn on d4? How quickly do you do it? And the second question, do you exchange on d5?
Yeah, those are big questions. I think other things being equal, you're happy with white if after cd5, black has to go ed5. These structures with the bishop on b7, usually white is a bit better. But here it looks like after cd5, knight d5 is very possible, which often leads to a bunch of exchanges. I would guess neither. I would guess they don't play d4 yet, and they don't take on d5 yet. Moves like knight c3 or queen e2, like continue to slow it down. Then black has a choice if he wants to go pawn to c5 or leave the pawn there, go a5 play. Sometimes you also say dc4, bc4, c5. So there's a lot of room for creative expression here.
Hikaru did take on d5 in the Title Tuesday game, but you're right, it's a very rare move. It was Hikaru versus Borknik 2022. Hikaru played cd, ed, and d4. And again, a rare move here is not the same as a rare move in like move 6 of a Najdorf. It's not necessarily going to change the flavor of the position that much. And you could get some transpositions, right? You can go knight c3, a6, c takes d5. You could start with c takes d5. So it's more about the general contours of the position than about the specific move. With that said, of course, both Hikaru and Magnus are going to take some time to kind of adjust themselves to their surroundings before they choose a move.
Yeah, my understanding is after CD, if ED, then white should be a bit better after D4. ED in a way is a fighting choice because CD knight D5 often lends itself to more exchanges. Then if white goes D4, then C5, and the whole center can disappear. But I'd be very surprised if Hikaru and Magnus went CD5 or repeated CD5 here. Let's see.
Okay, Magnus on the right side and the bottom camera feed about to make a move. He hesitated there. Is it going to be knight c3, the most popular move according to the database? Not for Hikaru. He's played queen to e2.
Yeah,
kind of
both
a
of them,
cagey, flexible move, yeah.
Yeah. I like it, not committing to anything. If pawn to c5, white can still decide what setup he wants to play. Even d3, knight bd2 is still on the table. What should black do?
Ooh. First person to play queen e2, Mikhail Botvinnik in 1956 against the Swedish Gideon Stahlberg. Very strong player. Not a name that everybody in the chat will know, but he played in the very famous Zurich 1953 event. I think he did become a grandmaster, which is saying a lot. There were just a handful of them when the title first appeared. And queen e2 has been met by c5. Yeah, both of them playing queen e2, c5, and now knight c3 by Magnus.
And rook to d1 by Hikaru, going his own way.
Wow. Smyslov versus Gipsless. Ulf Anderson had this position. Lots and lots of famous names. Yeah, and now the boards deviate. Rook d1 by Hikaru on the left, and knight to c3, the sort of more conventional developing move by Magnus. Very interesting stuff.
So many choices for black as well. You could make sort of a neutral move like rook c8 or rook to e8, slightly improving the position. Or you could commit, I think in both cases, to the structure with d takes c4, where normally white recaptures with the pawn, hopes to get a pawn majority in the center, but black's pieces are quite good. I've seen people play this d takes c, b takes c, and then some plans like knight e1 and f4 and g4. It's a very complex structure.
Oh yeah, I actually remember that there's some Kramnik-Fridman game that I remember in this line a long time ago. This f4 g4 idea. Good call. And the thing is, this is not purely a positional battle. This actually can get very tactical if like an exchange happens in the center. This is not just a boring maneuvering snooze fest. I mean, there's a lot of tension in the center.
And white pretty much holds the keys. He can go cd5, often leading to simplifications at every juncture, but both Hikaru and Magnus have chosen not to, trying to keep the tension, making it more complex. Queen c7 by Vishy. And Bassem, still thinking about it.
Yeah, so if Bassem plays queen c7 and then Magnus plays rook fd1, we will ultimately get the same position. But this is exactly what I was saying, is like the specific move doesn't always matter that much. You essentially just have to wait for the first exchange to happen, for the tension to clear. Then we can make more, incisive comments about the direction of the game. Right now, there's just so many ways that both players can position their pieces.
Yeah, this could really go into many directions. Bassem also chooses to keep the tension with a6. I was wondering in the starting positions, can the players actually see the other board? Is it possible to cheat or not cheat, but have a peek and say, okay, Vishy played knight e2, he probably knows what he's doing, let's go with that? Or it's just not done.
Yeah, and actually you called it. I'm seeing Vincent Keimer's name appearing. He had this, the position on the right in 2022, Grandelius versus Topalov, so still a lot of illustrious names. We're still in broadly normal channels. And I'm curious, Magnus on the right side, will he play c takes d5? Is now the time? I really struggle with this personally. When to release the tension in the center, when to time your trade. Anytime I release it, I seem to give up the center. Anytime I keep the tension, something bad happens to me. It's such a difficult decision. It takes a lot of positional acumen and understanding of these particular structures to know, when to press the buttons at the right time.
Yeah, it's very difficult. You could argue that a6 doesn't help black in these cd5 structures. So maybe now is a decent moment after a6 to go cd5, knight d5, knight d5, bishop d5, and then try to open the center with e4 and d4. But if there's much play left after that, I do not know either. Also,
Wow.
I guess Magnus wants to keep it as undefined as possible to give Bassem a chance to think, spend some time, not forcing the issue. Yeah, he's played rook ft1, and we almost have the same position yet again.
Yeah,
But
yeah.
not
If
quite.
somehow that queen gets to b8 on the left side, you have the Hikaru Vishy game where queen b8 was played, dropping the queen away from the X-ray, and potentially moving it to a8 and setting up that nice little battery along the long diagonal. We're still following an old game, Smislav versus Ivar's Gipslis. I love that last name. Gipslis was a very strong Latvian IM, and I don't think he ever became a GM, but, IM in the Soviet Union, Jan, was kind of like when, Wonderful Time on chess.com, Min Lee, now he's a strong GM. When he was an IM, nobody's really thinking of him as an IM, but I really love it when old games come up. I have an interesting story. I was working on my King's Indian course, and there was one position that came up, and there were two games in the database that popped up. One game was something like Wei Yi versus, Keimer from 2018. And then the other game was like Smislav versus, some old Soviet master, and it was from like 1940. So they're just two games, and they were separated by 80 years. And the continuity of chess is really beautiful, how that can happen. And again, how ahead of their time these old masters were. As we finally see an exchange on c4 and some definition in the center, Jan.
Yeah, Bassem is saying, I've seen enough. Time to clarify that structure, dc4, bc4. Now he puts the queen on c7. The advantage is he no longer has to worry about cd5 at every juncture. Is this going to happen or not? And now his play becomes a bit more natural. Rooks can go to the center, rook fd8, rook ac8. Then he can do a Vishy, go queen b8, and maybe put the queen in the corner as well. The drawback is white has a potential majority in the center. Although this position, if white ever goes d4, I always found very tough to handle. These so-called hanging pawns after d4, cd4, ed4, very difficult to play if there's nothing directly happening. So I'd be surprised if Magnus pushed his d-pawn just yet.
Yeah, and Gipslis did become a GM toward the second half of his career, so a rightful title. And okay, so again, Magnus could still play d4 and try to establish a presence in the center, but on the other hand, it would block the diagonal. So this is just still a very hard position to predict the flow of the game because there are so many alternatives.
Yeah, there's still the good old Kramnik plan, knight e1, f4, g4, although I'm not sure if the rook on d1 is ideal for that. So many choices. What has Hikaru done? Can we switch to the Hikaru game for a second? He just went knight to h4. Knight on the rim.
Allowing
for
d4.
d4. That's very provocative, to put it mildly.
That is quite a move, and the engine doesn't seem to love it, to put it mildly. Wait a second. I'm just trying to wrap my head around. I mean, d4 is generally not a move that you want to allow, especially when it triggers an exchange of light-squared bishops. What could he be attracted to here? Maybe d4 he wants to exchange and go knight b5?
Yeah, and then after e5, put his knight to f5, hitting that bishop.
Huh.
It's very, very provocative.
It just feels off. And let's put this on the board, on the analysis board maybe. So d4 is the move that we're concerned about, and likely the move that Vishy plays. Okay, let's say ed4, cd4. And now you can't go bishop takes bishop first because black will take the knight. And Vishy didn't play it. Vishy, yeah, I mean, after takes, black has several good moves here. d3 is a big advantage. e5 is a big advantage.
Very tempting, yeah.
But Vishy plays dc and allows like the perfect transformation for Hikaru. I'm shocked that he didn't go d4.
Hikaru bluffed him. Now Hikaru got what he wanted. Now he has the structure where the bishops are exchanged, and he can think about this f4, g4 business I keep mentioning. This is actually a tough position for black to play. So I'm very surprised Vishy went for this and not d4. Trusted Hikaru.
Hikaru is sitting back saying, whew, I dodged a bullet there. But d4 was the principled option. It was a pretty big advantage for black. And I mean, it looked pretty irresistible. But again, it's easy for me to say. Vishy's the one sitting in front of Hikaru, and it's not like he's losing or anything like that. He might be a little bit worse at this point.
Yeah. No, it's not like he's in trouble, but he had a chance to get a significant advantage already. He plays a6, hinting at b5, which I guess white just goes a4 and says no, thank you. Not that b5 is a threat yet, but just to eliminate that option.
Yep. And then again, f4. That's the main idea for white, and Hikaru plays it.
F4 played directly, b5 not a threat yet. This g4, g5 plan is very effective because these pawns cover all the squares for the black pieces. The pawn on f4 and the pawn on g5 chasing. There's knight on f6 away. Then the bishop on the long diagonal can start having a good look at the black king side. This can be very dangerous.
And I think this is a great illustration of the limitations of the dogma, or in Casablanca, it's probably known as a katma, of not pushing pawns in front of your own king, which is so many exceptions because the king is perfectly safe. Black just doesn't have the offensive firepower to punish white, at least in the short term, for pushing the pawn to g5. Of course, it's still risky in the long run if your attack backfires, but that bishop on b2, once it opens up, that queen on e2, once it gets involved, this knight on g2, once it jumps into the attack and knifes its way into black's camp, Vishy better brace for impact, and I think that's exactly what he's doing. Queen b7 is a really heads-up move by Vishy, activating his queen, maybe hinting at b5 and rook b8 later. You cannot sit idly by and wait for Hikaru to checkmate you on the king side.
Yeah, I was wondering maybe he's also preparing knight e4 in response to g4, g5, although then you have to be careful with queen f3 and some potential pins. I don't like Vishy's position here all that much. Do we have a picture of the trophies? I hear they are playing 4 amazing trophies over there. Let's see.
Ooh.
They do look cool.
That is lovely.
They do look like something John Wick
girl
would throw at some villains working for the Continental.
Wow. That's really awesome. I like innovative trophies, and my only problem at tournaments is how do they fit in your luggage? I mean, you don't want to take it on the airplane because I've had some bad experiences with that. You know how they handle your luggage at airport security, but oftentimes the organizers ship the trophy separately to the player's place of residence.
There's this famous story where Kasparov and Kramnik, I think, shared first place in Linares, a young Kramnik, and Kasparov generously allowed Kramnik to take the gigantic trophy, and Kramnik soon figured out it didn't really fit in his luggage, so he learned that lesson early on. And we're being told there are 3 these are the trophies in the cabinet at the center, a horse made of wire by some local artist for the winner, and 3 same ones for the rest, so 4 trophies. Did look absolutely gorgeous.
I played a Blitz tournament in Corsica years ago, and for my second place prize, I got some cash, and I got a jar or a bottle of locally produced apple juice from like freshly picked Corsican apples. And of course, you can't take it with you on the airplane. You can't take a liquid with you in the U.S. Or through the U.S. So I was like, do I guzzle this huge bottle down right before I get on the airplane? What do? I can't put this beautiful, apple juice to waste. My mom would kill me. So I ended up having a little bit and then sharing it with the guy who drove me to the airport.
That's very, very generous. Yeah, we all have these stories. My prestigious Thailand Open first prize trophy from 2011 still sitting at a friend's house in Thailand. I haven't figured out the logistics, but I'll get to it.
One day.
All right, knight to e4, played by Anand, and a classy move by Hikaru. This looks like from some old Dvoretsky book. Knight back to b1,
Ooh.
avoiding the exchange, saying, I'll kick that knight away, and then I'll return to c3. I don't want to trade any pieces.
Isn't it crazy how similar the games are going? Just the general arc of the games. In the Magnus game on the right, the bishops have been exchanged. He also might play f4. There's also a pawn on a4 and a black pawn on a6. I actually think it's really cool, the similarities between the positions. Of course, they're heading in a different direction with Bassem putting his knight on e5 and trying to swing it back to c6 so he could access that outpost on d4 on b4. Suddenly, the games are kind of heating up.
Yeah. And instructive stuff by Vishy. I'm not sure if these are the best moves, but he's, of course, anticipated that g4, g5 plan. Got his knight out of the way, sitting on d6 now, where it maybe supports b5, and also black could play f5 or bishop f6, depending how things go. So I like that maneuver by Anand, saying, I'm not going to idly wait for you to checkmate me.
And g4 by Magnus. I thought it would be Hikaru who would be the first to start pushing that g-pawn down the board. Instead, Carlsen, it's go time for him. And Bassem can put his knight on b4. Yes, true. But then g5 and knight c3 to e4 and queen e2 to h5. And all those moves I pointed out in the Hikaru game might actually happen on the other board. Look at Vishy.
Yeah.
I love the way that he's handled the position ever since he didn't play the move d4. He's adjusted to the new circumstances. He's gotten that queenside counterplay rolling, and he's definitely not worse anymore. He might have been slightly worse, but now I think he may even be back in the driver's seat.
Maybe that's why he didn't go d4, because he knew how to handle these dc4 structures. Vishy has been around and clearly knows what he's doing here. In the Magnus game, it's curious, because you mentioned the knight has this outpost on b4. I was doing commentary on a game, Carlsen Rapport, recently, where the knight also had this beautiful outpost on b4. And Magnus explained, yeah, it's a nice square, but often the action is on the king side. And then the knight on the outpost on b4 can be a bit of an idle spectator. I'm not sure if that applies here, but an interesting view that sometimes you can give an outpost on the other side of the board, and that knight won't be around for defending where the action actually is.
That's such a great point. You know, we often fall in love with an outpost because a piece can't be chased away, and this gives you that warm and fuzzy feeling. Ooh.
Yeah.
In Russian, there's the term eternal knight. Just a knight on a square, and that knight can never be chased away. Okay, congratulations. You know, you'll get the medal, you'll get the freshly squeezed apple juice, and then you'll get checkmated on the king side. So Magnus factoring that in with the move rook to d2, perhaps preparing to double if necessary to protect that tender pawn on d3, because that is one thing the knight on b4 would be doing, is putting pressure on white's only serious weakness, that pawn on d3. So the tension heating up on both boards at the same time.
Yeah, Vishy, as we've mentioned, has created enough counterplay. He won't get attacked. Rook fc8. Now he very much has his own ideas. c5, c4 is looming. And the further the position opens on the queen side, the weaker the white king could actually get. If we imagine he manages to go c4, clear the e4 square for his knight. So Anand very much in the game, if not slightly better. While I do like Magnus's position, of course. There's the Magnus factor, but also he really seems to know what he's doing. Now g5 and knight to e4 are coming.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it's in a rapid time control. It's also how easy your play is, right? How easy the moves are. G5 looks irresistible. As Bassem establishes that knight on b4, really going to try to make it difficult for white to operate by tying himself to the d3 pawn. And for Hikaru, you saw his knight getting to d2, stopping Vishy from advancing his pawn to c4. Now we get a bishop exchange. And at this point, Hikaru's dreams of a kingside attack are a long lost dream. In fact, it's probably the opposite scenario, as you said, is more likely at this point.
Yeah. And the pawn on c5 is also not such a weakness. It's hard to attack. You also gotta keep an eye on c4 at all times. I think Vishy has handled this beautifully. I'm not sure if he's better, but he seems to be in control.
Yeah, I think probably if I had to make a prediction, a draw is the likeliest at this point in the Hikaru game. You can see pieces getting exchanged. At the same time, things could get extremely tactical. And I think his last move, e4, obviously that sort of threatens the fork with e5. Yeah, it does threaten e5. And Vishy drops his knight back to d7. Now e5 would be a terrible positional move because it would give the black knight on d6 a direct path to heaven on f5 and potentially d4.
Still like Vishy's position. e4, yeah, probably logical to grab some space, but if the knight ever shows up on d4, the queen just has to leave b5, and then the road via b5 is clear. It's gonna be very, very difficult for white to handle.
Magnus
Rook
overprotecting that
C1
d3 pawn, and rook to c1 on the other board, doubling rooks.
Hard to find a game to focus on. They're both moving at the same pace, more or less. There's some stuff happening in both, but the board not exploding. Let's go to Carlsen. I mean, where e5 is played. This is, saying, all right, no more small talk. Let's get to business.
Indeed. Yeah, the other board is pretty much equal. I'm keeping an eye on it, and we'll go back to the two-board view now when things get interesting. But this is where the action is heating up. I agree. e5. Bassem going after it, and f takes e5, queen takes e5. I guess his claim is that there are no ultra scary discovered attacks against the queen. Of course, the obvious move there is knight to d5, but then the queen could drop back to e6, and the more pieces get exchanged, the more significant the weakness of the d3 pawn and potentially the weakness, again, of white's king.
Yeah, very committal decision, e5, of course. Weakens the light squares on d5 in particular. Big time, but is also asking white to commit to a structure. If white wants to go f5, g5, fe5 here, try to keep it with knight g2. Big choice for Magnus now.
And 6 minutes on the clock. Both players on both boards really spending their time in these complicated middle games, which shows us it's not just in tactical positions that the players think. Sometimes in tactical positions, they play faster. They kind of follow their intuition. They have a good sense of which moves are correct. When it's dynamic, when it's more positional, it's so hard to make sense of the position because you have so many decisions to make on every move. Now things are getting more tactical. Can you play f takes e5, queen takes e5? Maybe get this knight back to f3. But then black can still play queen e6 and the g4 pawn sticks out like a sore thumb. I don't know what to do.
Me neither. I'm also a bit attracted to just going f5. But I wonder if black is in time then to go e4 and try to disturb white over there. It's a tough decision.
I really like e5, I'll be honest, was completely not on my radar. But I think Bassem realized that if he didn't play it, the opportunity train would leave because g5 and knight e4 would happen. And in the meantime, Magnus follows the commentator's advice. Finally, they know who to listen to. It took them a couple rounds, but it's great to see that logic and rationality has prevailed in the end.
Yeah, that's like his World Championship matches. After a while, he listens to the voice of reason. I kid. But what happens now? Can we go e4, or is that asking too much? Just knight takes e4?
Let's put it on the analysis board. So e4, let me just explain for people. Like d4 is bad, I think, because at the end of the line, black is able to pick up the pawn on g4 and get this knight around to e5. So the big question, of course, is knight takes e4. But still black is better. Yeah, knight takes e4, d takes e4. Bassem did not play the move e4. Apparently, look at this, Jan. Takes, and queen to c6 is the critical move.
Yeah.
Forking these two pawns. And black is better. But Bassem played h6, and Magnus instantly says, no more e4.
Ooh,
I'll put a pawn on that square.
The bullet there. Yeah.
Big mistake by Bassem to not play e4. Easier said than done, but now he's worse.
Yeah, it felt like that was a key moment because now Magnus can lock down on that d5 square. He can go knight d5 whenever he wants, shutting out the entire black army, basically. The rooks on d7 and d8. start doing nothing. Bassem goes knight c6, rerouting to d4 as well, but still knight d5 or knight f3, maybe hangs the g4 pawn, I'm not sure. Yeah, it felt like that e5, e4 was what the position was asking for, just spring into action before it's too late.
h4 and queen g2. If you can push this knight out of f6, then you can establish your own knight on d5. And there's a lack of equivalency in these two outposts because, yeah, black can play knight d4, but it doesn't carry the same weight. Also, white's bishop can later just exchange itself for that knight, and black doesn't have the same power because he doesn't have a light-squared bishop. So Magnus is better, but still tons of pieces on the board, still a very complicated middle game and a million ways that this could turn around again.
Absolutely. But I like this h4, queen g2 plan, just ignoring the knight on d4 for now. And then if white can get g5, knight d5, bishop d4, he really, really would take control of the board. Let's see what Magnus does.
Yeah, this is a big moment. Nothing happening on the other board in the meantime. Still, the structure has remained the same. So let's stick on this game for now because this is a critical moment. Look at Carlsen under 4 minutes, I think sensing that he needs to play accurately for 2 or 3 moves. And then I think he senses that the path will be much easier if he avoids a mistake here. So he's willing to sacrifice a couple minutes in order to do that.
Yeah. So far he's playing imperfect Capablanca style in Casablanca. Capablanca had this wisdom. You exchange one of your bishops, then you put the pawns on the color of the bishop. That you exchanged. Let the other bishop control the squares around it. And yeah, Magnus only needs the pawn on h2 to advance 1 square to have the perfect Capablanca setup. Although I have a feeling he might push it further, go 2 squares.
I think Capablanca would enjoy Casablanca chess. And I think Casablanca would enjoy Capablanca chess. I mean, just mix and match, pick and choose. Knight to d5 by Carlsen. I'm a little bit surprised he rushed that move. But I was fully expecting h4, queen g2. Bassem immediately recaptures. And
yeah, now knight d4 will be played?
Yes, and then we will get...
we
get an exchange?
I would guess so. You can't tolerate that knight there forever, can you? And if the queen goes somewhere, there's also bishop g5. I don't know. Is this the max? Still, white looks better after knight d4, bishop d4, because his pawn on d5 is also a passed pawn, while the black pawn on d4 will not be. It doesn't feel like this is the best he could get.
Yeah, it's definitely not the max. It might be the Irva, but I agree. I think that keeping the tension might have been a better idea. Maybe he was influenced by the clock time, just trying to clarify the situation a little bit. I still think that white's position is preferable. And the reason why, well, on a very high level, if it's a closed position, common wisdom dictates that you want the knight over the bishop because knights are better at sort of narrow spaces and chiseling their way into particular squares. That doesn't really apply here, Jan, because this bishop does have a direct path to some of these juicy dark squares, particularly in white's territory.
Magnus doesn't care. Say,
yeah,
put your bishop on e3. I'll
do
move
whatever
my
you
king
want.
away. If I need to, I'll kick it with knight c2. And I'm going to target that b6 pawn in the meantime.
Oh, wow. I didn't even look at that. That pawn was not even on my general radar. And Magnus immediately switches from the d file. It's kind of interesting. The rooks on the d file were defending a weak pawn. And now they're attacking a weak pawn on the b file. He wants to tie black down, and of course he wants to prevent b5 and c4, which would be devastating if it happened.
He's shifty, adjusting to the new situation. What's the clock? 3 versus 4 minutes? Okay, still some time.
Still some time. Bishop g5. The drawback is that it allows rook d to b2. You're actually encouraging the idea that white wants to play anyway, but you can't go c4, you can't go b5. How does Magnus always just create the situation where you feel like you're just losing, even though you know you're not? Maybe
and he's mentioned
f6? Yeah. Mm-hmm.
He's mentioned it's a feature of his style that he usually strives for clarity. Like if there's a position with a lot of unknowns, he likes to transform it into a structure. He understands where the play is a bit cleaner, and he said that's a difference towards like how example Caruana plays, who likes to complicate the position further. And I'm not sure if that influenced his choice here, but in a way it's typical. He doesn't keep the tension with the h4, queen g2, but he goes for a defined structure where he knows where the pieces are going and will try to squeeze that one. Like, yeah, he's good at chess. Hot take.
Good at chess. I didn't
Must
realize
be nice.
that. I learn new things every day. Yeah, I don't know what that's like. That's shoes that I don't think I'll ever get to wear as he doubles on the B file. Maybe we can go to the two-board view briefly, because the Hikaru game, for a very long time, it was sort of the same structure they were maneuvering around, but now things are finally starting to heat up. Hikaru advanced his pawn to g5. There was an exchange that opened up the h file, and Vishy's last move was knight f8 to g6, hitting that pawn on f4. He is a brave man, this Vishy Anand, but look at Hikaru's structure. d3 is weak, f4 is weak, knight fe5, sacking the pawn. Oh my goodness, things are exploding.
What is going on? King is weak. Why can't we take on f4?
Because queen h2, and there might be some mating. Oh my goodness, there might be some beautiful mating patterns on that board, as Bassem Amin sticks his queen on f4 on the right side, and both games are exploding now. This is big. Knight to d2 by Magnus, defending the g4 pawn, getting the knight around to c4, but he is just solidly better. The Hikaru game is going off the rails.
Nice. Let's have a look at the Hikaru game.
Yeah.
Knight f5 played last. And if knight takes f4, you mentioned, then queen to h2 could be a potential problem. Or queen f3, also strong.
Anywhere.
This is too greedy somehow.
Yeah, black is just in huge trouble. The knight doesn't have anywhere to go. I mean, if you go back to g6, rook h2, I mean, everybody can see that this is just imminent checkmate. And if you're not taking on f4, well, what the heck are you doing if you play knight d4, queen h5? Apparently, knight takes f4, and the typical engine play. Now the queen drops back to g4. And again, it's the same problem where the only square for the knight is g6. And I'm making these moves. This is just analysis. And at the end, white plays knight c4 to e5. So the underlying problem for black is the h file. Once a rook gets to h2, black's king can get checkmated in the span of like 2 moves. I think Vishy is suddenly in huge trouble unless he finds a very concrete move, and I don't know what that looks like.
I'm not sure what happened. It looked like Vishy did all the right things, navigated this position beautifully. That goes to show the greatness of Hikaru. That boom, all of a sudden knight e5, h-file is open, and there's all kinds of unpleasantness to deal with. And I
Best
saw,
move,
I think,
knight d6.
Knight d6, the computer said that's a rough move to make. Yeah.
He's got knight
Might
d4.
jump to d4, yeah.
But queen h5 is a difficult move, at least for me. My instinct in a bullet game would be to go queen to g4 and keep the f4 pawn protected. This is a huge moment. Where will Hikaru put his queen? I'm actually not sure why queen g4 is so wrong. Or like, is it
Why
wrong?
is it bad? It looks completely natural then. Once again, intending
It's
rook
not
h2.
bad.
Oh, no, it's also
It's
strong,
not bad.
yeah.
It's also almost decisive. Queen e3, though, by Hikaru.
He chose door number 3. Still wants rook h2, queen h3.
But knight c6, the blue arrow showing that it's very important, and that was a very hard move. Knight c6 was not logical at all. Magnus. Vishy takes on e5. Hikaru recaptures. Now knight c6 is played. Apparently, f takes e5 was stronger by Hikaru. Instead, he recaptured automatically with the knight. And the more pieces come off, the less likely it is that black gets checkmated.
Yeah, knight c6 is nice. He's saying, I don't care about the c5 pawn. It's about my king. The one pawn wouldn't be such a big factor. The white king will also be open if the knights get exchanged and white takes there. Vishy may be back in business here.
Knight g4 is a very Hikaru-esque move, but he might not be in time, because let's not forget about this d3 pawn. Let's not forget that after a move like queen to b3, white doesn't have, carte blanche on the h file. You could also collapse in the center before you manage to get 2 of your heavy pieces onto the h file. I think Hikaru just forgot about this retreating knight move. The common wisdom dictates it's the hardest move in chess, Jan, and Hikaru might just have to bail out by making a draw with knight takes c6 and queen takes e5. Not what he wanted. and not what we were expecting just a couple moves ago. Vishy,
Yeah.
he's a legend.
Vishy hanging in there. Are knight retreats the toughest? I usually always miss like queen diagonal retreats. Those I find are impossible.
I miss chess moves of all shapes
fair
and sizes.
enough.
Knight g4 played.
And knight g4
Let's
played, you called it?
go. Queen b3. Does he want some sort of crazy sacrifice with knight
rook
f6?
g2 sickness?
Or the other way around, maybe rook g2 first.
Uh-huh.
And then knight f6. We're going to get pandemonium here to end this game. Oh, my lands.
What's the clock? Minute and a half versus 2.5 minutes. Not a lot of time to calculate. Compy saying it's equal as always, but anything can happen here.
Magnus still overwhelmingly better, so not too much action on the other board. And c4, best move. Best move by Vishy,
very
blasting
clean.
open the center.
Also not doing anything crazy, saying I have queen b6 if you get too cute with your attacking moves with your knight f6s. I can always exchange the queens. Same time, it's hitting the pawn on d3, so you don't really have time to
Gotta go DC.
King h1 or whatever. DC? Now what does he want? Queen b3
Queen
is a
B3.
bailout. Yeah, this is solid.
Hikaru has to exchange. His position is collapsing otherwise. I mean, queen f2 allows rook to d1, and you drop your knight on g4. All of his pieces are loose, and even though he's a pawn down in the endgame, I think everybody can see how active black's pieces are. You've got a rook on the d file. You've got a knight angling for d4. Still some meat on the bone in this endgame. It's a sharp endgame. It should be a draw, but anything can happen. Hikaru down to a minute.
I'd actually pick black, even though black is a pawn down. It looks like it's so much easier to play for black. After the queen exchange, rook g3 is the immediate threat. The other rook can come, the knight can jump into d4. This is going to be very, very difficult to handle.
Indeed, Magnus is winning, completely winning in an endgame, and he's just completely outplaying Bassem from that position as we saw in c5.
Rook g3, rook g2 was not a big threat yet, so he finds time to push his pawn.
Hikaru is still playing for a win. I mean, we know how Hikaru thinks. He's always looking for maximum. He's always able to, to slither his way out of narrow spaces. And Vishy has to stay on top. 2 minutes for Anand. Knight to b4 on the board, hitting the rook. Obviously trying to get it to move out of the second rank so that rook g3 would pick up the knight. And that knight is jumping into d3 potentially.
Yeah, knight d3 is there. He had to let the c-pawn off the leash. Probably didn't love doing that, but it's much more important to bother white with knight d3 next. Rook g2 played. Knight d3, rook d1, I'm assuming. Still very sharp. Then some rook c8, let's say.
I think it's maybe Hikaru might even be looking at in some situations for a tactic, even with the queen's off, but I don't think there's a way to make it work. I think should be a bailout somehow. Rook to d1, pinning the knight. Don't move it. Your rook is hanging. Vishy has to be careful now. Rook to c8, and rook g3 is basically just a draw.
F5, but that's not doing much either, is it? The knight can still jump to f4 even.
Let's go to the two-board view because Magnus is about to win his game. So let's watch both boards at the same time as the climax is being reached. Hikaru and Vishy will shake hands shortly, I think. This is just a 3-on-3. And look at Magnus's pawns on e5 and d6. Bassem, again, struggling with the clock.
Yeah, positional clinic by Magnus. His pawns ended on e5, d6. The rooks and the knight on perfect squares hitting b6. Beautiful game.
Something
the king
tells
has
me
a clean path to d5.
Something tells me we're still going to get some intrigue in the Hikaru Anand game. I don't know why, but I feel like somehow that game isn't entirely over. I mean, obviously, if the knights were off the board, it would be. We'll see. Maybe it is. Maybe they'll just trade rooks. Yeah, I guess it's just a draw.
Rook c3.
Yeah. And rook d3. Yeah, never mind. Okay. But Bassem is still holding on, and Magnus is down a minute. He hasn't been able to get his king. He actually went the other way. He went back to G1, did Mr. Carlsen.
He didn't run? Wow.
He didn't run. He went back. Okay, Hikaru, Magnus, or Vishy and Hikaru exchanging all of the pawns. They will shake hands momentarily.
Yeah, this is over.
Magnus in a bullet game now. Rook F1 check. Let's go to the Bassem game because, okay, Hikaru and Magnus have shaken hands. Or sorry, I keep getting them confused. Vishy and Hikaru have made the draw. Just king versus knight on the board. That leaves us with the Magnus game. This is a pivotal game. Hikaru praying for Bassem to save this position.
This is a big one with Hikaru drawing. If Magnus wins, he extends his lead to 1 point before that final game. Can he do it?
Okay.
F8 played.
Bishop G5. I'm pessimistic here, Jan. It's just such a hard position to play with 11 seconds. But he's done it so far. And Bishop G5 to E3 potentially to create some counterplay. 30 seconds for Carlsen.
How does White win this? I can see the computer is very optimistic, but it still looks like...
Rook G2 maybe? I mean, that's kind of my instinct, but that also allows B5. An old friend knocking on the door. 17 seconds. What does Magnus play? Rook E8 check on the board.
King D7.
Can he go?
It's the rook.
E6 is brazen.
No, not yet.
Rook sack. Rook B8, Rook A8. 8 seconds. Gotta move.
G8.
Rook G8.
Pick a square, Magnus.
B8.
B8 played. Bishop E3
Bishop
check.
E3 check.
King H1.
King
Ain't
H1.
worry about nothing. And if Bishop F4, here's Rook B7 check. With
It's
one
winning.
pair of rooks, then the pass pawns would have to essay eventually.
I think you should try that if you're Bassem. Bishop F4, then get your king to E6. 10 seconds for the Egyptian Grandmaster. Looks over at the clock, looks back at the board, doesn't know what to do, plays king E6. He is losing. But how does Magnus finish this?
How exactly?
Rook takes B6, gets mated. Rook takes H2. He's taken with the other rook. Bishop F4. Bishop F4. Jan, Bishop F4. Black is in business, I think, after Bishop F4. 5 seconds, though, for Amin.
I don't see a win. I was wondering Bishop F4, D7,
D7.
but King takes, and now D7 wins.
Now D7, he's
King
blundered.
takes and E6. Yeah, this
Oh, no. And will Magnus find it? He does.
is it. Yeah.
Oh, that's brutal. King E7, you could even promote. Promote Rook B8 and Rook B7.
Oh, and he does it, picking up a whole rook.
How does he always seem to emerge victorious? He always does it in the end. Magnus wins.
Must be nice.
Pain for Bassem. He came close there. He got back from a lost position, got Magnus into time pressure, but couldn't make it happen in the end. Rook E8, goodbye rook. And that ends the game. A smile and a handshake. Magnus wins, cementing his lead.
Let's listen in.
Doubling first and it's rook f7?
Yeah, fully. I was completely out of control at that point.
Magnus looks mildly annoyed. Sometimes he has that even if he wins, if he's unhappy with his play or if he feels like he missed something, then he's not in great mood, even though he won a game. How do you feel about it? For me, if I win, I'm normally happy. Like, I know I play nonsense most of the time anyway, so I'll take the point. But he has higher standards.
Yeah, his standards are I have to win, I have to do it perfectly, and I have to convert without giving my opponent any chances. As long as I check that first box, I'm happy. I'm a simple man, Jan. But what a game! Really, both games were fascinating. Hikaru, of course, drawing Vishy. That was a very combative game. Well done by Vishy there to hold the line and what was a potentially losing, very, very dangerous position toward the end.
Yeah, fun round. And we're now being joined by a guest, Mr. Tarek Senhaji, who has been the managing director of pours the Capablanca since April 2020 and who I am being told is a driving force, maybe the inventor of this whole event. Tarek, welcome to the show. Not sure he can hear us yet.
See if we can get his mic set up. Hi, Tarek. Can you hear us? Oh, there we go. I think.
Yes, hi. Can you hear me?
Yes.
We can hear you. Hi, Tarek.
Yes, hi. Hi, everyone. I feel like one of those TV fan shows. I'm a big fan of your shows, and it's a special pleasure for me to be seeing myself there. It's quite amazing. Thank you.
Well, thank you for giving us the pleasure of this very unique event. How do you feel about the tournament so far, and what did you do to make it happen?
Well, we are absolutely humbled by the reaction to this Casablanca variant. It's an idea that we had in the back of our minds for 4 years, and we were waiting for the right time. I'm sorry, it's a new idea, so I didn't want to be stupid that we're coming out with it. So I kept checking the idea, and every time we had someone on the festival, we had Luke Van Wally, and then we had last year the great Judith Polgar, and she said, look, this can work, you should really push for it. Yeah, we pushed for it. The idea seems, excuse me the term, so stupid, so naive, that I couldn't understand why nobody else came up with it. And sometimes you have to double check yourself. It's a little bit like in chess. You see such an obvious move, you triple check yourself why they're allowing me to do it.
Tariq, the selection of players obviously makes this tournament so interesting. You've got 4 players from 4 different continents. How did you go about the player selection, and is the fact that they span the entire globe a deliberate decision?
Yes, but also I was saying we didn't want to be stupid, so we had to be opportunistic, wait for the right time. I was convinced that if we don't come up with a world-class event, when something is very new, people don't take you seriously. So we had to have very credible personalities around it. And to be honest, we couldn't dream for better lineup. So you said, how did I do it? I mean, I'm from the business world, so I see opportunities. FIDE approached us for the FIDE 100 celebration. And I said, yes, we'll host it if you get us Vishy, because you know the obvious connection with FIDE. But also Vishy is one of the best rapid players of all time. And also he's a monument of the game. So right away, it is in the spirit of the history of the game. Once we got Vishy, then it was easier to get the attention of Magnus and Hikaru. And Magnus is, as you know, a great fan of the history of chess. So I think we piqued his interest. And the second thing as well is we played on the mystique of Casablanca. Somehow, most of these players never put their foot in Casablanca, let alone, or maybe not even Africa. I mean, the last event we had in Africa was 2019 with Kasparov, who helped that event. So I think it's a mixture of curiosity and opportunism. And as I said, I'm completely overwhelmed because it surpassed all our imagination. We are so humbled, and also I'm getting to speak to Daniel and Diane. So yeah, it's everything is going fine.
That's the big one. Congratulations. We're certainly having a good time with the event, and from what we hear from the audience, people out there are loving it as well. So yeah, it's been a pleasure. We know that you're a big chess fan, chess player as well. Do you have any hopes for the position of the final game?
Well, I would like to see fighting chess. I would like to see a good game, and the whole variant, as you can imagine, is just about having fun. We don't claim to be like the most important variant in the world, but I think it's a niche if for players and fans to enjoy good positions. This year we've gone for history, but I'm very excited because next year we'll go for AI. We'll go for computer generated position that maybe never played before. So as you can see, I'm a businessman, so I'm trying to pick the interest for next year as well.
Well, Tarek, I really love your approach. You're pushing chess in the right directions, adding creativity and spectator value to the sport, which is awesome. Final question. You just hinted at next year's edition. I assume that you're all on board with hosting the tournament a second time. And can you talk a little bit more about your experience organizing the event and what you think is going to happen next year?
Yeah, to be honest, I'll be reading very, very closely all your chat. I didn't have the time to do it, but I really would like to know how the fans are reacting to it. I have some of the players as well, but I'm waiting for the tournament to finish to see how they feel about it. And then we'll have a better view how we can adapt it. But one thing is for sure, I think the format is worth continuing to push and continuing to develop. We are very conscious that we are not the biggest tournament out there, but we would like to think of ourselves a tournament where the players and everyone involved with chess is having fun. I would like to say I'm a big consumer of online content, and I think there is a new generation of people who don't necessarily want to be very good at chess. They want just to have fun.
Absolutely. We are having fun. Thank you so much for putting this together. And enjoy the last round. Thanks for joining, Tarek.
Thank you. Thank you for your support. Thank you.
All right, we have one more round to go. The position, I believe, will be chosen by Grandmasters Hamdouchi and Laurent Fressinet, who are there on site. We'll find out what it is after the break. Stay tuned. Can Magnus Carlsen win the first Casablanca chess, or will Hikaru catch him? We'll find out.
It's better to
Yeah, you can
sit on
for,
this chair
for them.
for player to sit
Or no,
and
they
choose.
can sit there. Oh, whatever you prefer.
No.
Here's fine. Yeah, sure. Yeah.
Okay. The free position, please choose. You will play with black pieces. Okay, thank you.
Do you have a point by any chance? Yes, I still have the points. I don't know which one you want.
Let's put it. They are in position. You will play with black pieces.
Okay, see.
See? Yeah. Okay. Thank you. The free position, you will play with 5 pieces.
I don't like any of them. I guess C.
Which?
C.
See? Okay. Thank you.
So ACC.
Nakamura and Carlsen. That's good.
If two players choose A and two players choose C, then
Final was already there.
They are free position. Please choose one. You will play with 5 pieces. See? Okay, thank you. Thank you. Thank you.
Welcome back to the final round of the Casablanca Chess 2024 tournament. The players have chosen the position, and there were 3 votes for position number 3 and 1 vote for number 2. So number 3 it will be.
Okay, you can see the players there during the break choosing the positions. Magnus is a huge fan of all 3 of them, as we heard, but ultimately a very exciting unbalanced position chosen for our final round, the sixth round out of 6 in Casablanca chess.
Yeah, let's see the positions again. We should mention position number 1, the king on c8 and the bishop on g8 are swapped. The king should be on g8 and the bishop on c8, which I'm pretty sure the players caught because the bishop has no legal way to get to g8. I'm not sure how it was, but the position is out anyway. Number 3 it is. Z versus Galyamova from Kazan Shenyang 1999. Not the first time this match features, I believe, this Sicilian they played. Whenever the players get to choose, they choose a position from Z versus Galyamova, I think is how it works.
That's their policy. I mean, the second position just looked completely wild, and I think the players have had the sort of predilection to choose not necessarily a quiet position, but a position where I think the structure is more well-defined. They kind of is in the general realm of something familiar, as you see the notation pop up. So this comes actually from a Rouser Sicilian, much like their previous game, I think, from yesterday. And yeah, very interesting structure. The structure that kind of occurs out of the French as well.
Yeah, it looks like they don't want too crazy, right? They don't mind something sharp, but still some structures that look vaguely familiar, which makes sense because I think top players rely so heavily on pattern recognition that they don't love it if you take all the patterns away like we did in game number 1.
Mm-hmm. Okay, and we can see the handshakes there, the players assuming their seats. And I really like that the process of starting the games was streamlined today. I think Tarek in general had all the right qualities of an amazing organizer and just clearly a great guy as well. But when you host a tournament for the first time, you want to be ultra receptive to constructive criticism, and you want to say, listen, we're not going to get everything perfect the first day, and that's okay. And already you can see the organizer very receptive to implementing changes. And if he hosts this tournament again, which he absolutely should, we will continue to see it improve as the players make the moves on the board. Reading off the notation, Magnus will have white against Hikaru. Couldn't ask for a better way to close off this tournament.
Magnus needs to draw to win the whole thing. Doesn't mean he'll necessarily try to play for a draw. I think he also very much understands the spirit of the event, that it should be fun and entertaining, although he obviously will be looking forward to winning it as well. In case he loses this game to Hikaru, there will be a tie break, 2 blitz games. If it's still a tie, then Armageddon. But we're far from there yet, while the players are executing the moves and Magnus thinking.
Okay, it's white to play in the starting position. And G played the move G4, blasting open the king side. But there actually are 11 games in my database, and this has been played by some strong GMs. Dmitry Yakovenko had a game here. Alexei Dreyev on the black side, very strong GM, had this twice, actually. So, yeah, this is not entirely unexplored.
I don't understand this structure at all with the doubled f-pawns. Looks like white should be active. No, it's not the position where you can just maneuver bishop d3, knight e2, knight d4. This knight wouldn't be so stable there. So g4 might be in the spirit. What do people play in your database?
So g4 twice, once by G and then once by Alexei Kolovich, another GM more recently. Knight e2 is the most popular move, 6 games in the database. The idea of knight e2 is actually not to get the knight around to d4, most likely, but rather to play knight g3 and then maybe knight to h5, kind of nibbling around the edges and accessing the f6 square. Very interesting idea.
Yeah, and if black goes h5, you insist. Yeah, you go bishop e2, h4, knight h5. Still trying to get there.
Wow,
Looks
h5,
like a Magnus maneuver.
h4. H5, H4 has been played 5 times.
After knight e2, yeah?
Yeah.
Yeah, that makes sense, because you can't go knight g3 yet because of h4. So
Let's jump in.
Prepare it.
Let's jump into the Magnus game and put some moves on the board, shall we?
Deep thought, Mr. Carlsen.
So knight e2, most popular move, but g4 is is definitely the blitz move. I mean, when I looked at this position, my instinct told me g4, f, f5. You know, just like that very typical idea, but it's much easier to sacrifice other people's pawns than your own. I like sacrificing my own pawns too, but I generally blunder them rather than sack them. Knight e2 is more of the Magnus approach, I think, Jan, as you said.
Also a bit interesting, Magnus would choose this position needing a draw with white, because it's clearly a very unbalanced position where black has his trumps with the bishops, the control over the center. So it's not like he chose the driest position he could see, which probably would have been position number 1, this Carlsbad structure. But he's going for a tough one.
I really like this idea, knight e2, and I'm going to put this on the board, h5. So again, the idea is to go knight e3, black h5, and now h4. And if bishop takes h4, which has never been played, without consulting the engine, my guess is that queen f3 is a very nasty move, because now the bishop is kind of stuck. And if you say, oh, no problem, let me just give back the pawn, well, now the king side has been breached, and your king is in huge trouble because you can never really abandon the f7 pawn. This is exactly what you want to avoid. But look at Magnus Carlsen. He says, I need to draw. I don't care. I literally don't care about what result I need. I want to win.
That is pretty cool. We've seen knight e2, the other main move from Vishy in the other game. But let's stick with Magnus and pawn to g4. I guess black has to take it. You can't allow gf5, can you?
No. But
no, gotta
can
take.
Can you inform the ignorant why f5? Because Shi Jun played h3 here, which is understandable. I mean, this is sort of a typical idea. But what is black's exact response to an h3 has been played? I guess f5 doesn't actually pose a threat, which was the issue. And we're following the original game. I love it.
My instinct was to play g3 now, try to keep the h-file close, but arguably white still made some progress even after queen takes g3, then opening the g-file. Not sure if there are alternatives. You can just take on h3 and then try to, I don't know, evacuate the king towards the queen side. What would you do?
So I can show the people what happened in our original game, Shijun Galyamova. In the original game, let me make a few moves on the board. Black played g takes h3, bishop takes h3. Now queen c7 was played. White pushed f5. So this, of course, is ultimately the idea. Black castled queen side. And this is not the safest place on the board, but it's the only place that you can go to. Rook hf1, king b8, and the position remains very double-edged here. We had a trade on e6, and white infiltrated f7. So my kind of impression is that white has this initiative. White has a lot of tactical ideas, but black does have the bishop pair and the extra pawn. So again, dynamic equality. That's been one of the theme words of the day. At which point can black deviate? So first question, does black have to play GH? Can Hikaru maybe just jettison this pawn and prioritize his queenside development? Can he play b4? What is your instinct say, Jan?
Yeah, I'm drawn towards g3. This might be stupid, but just not allowing white to open the king side. g3, queen takes, and then some move like queen c7, and to prepare long castles. Might be overly cautious, and yeah, I guess Hikaru just took the pawn. No, if you're gonna suffer, at least be a pawn up. G takes h3, played.
Okay.
They're following the original game.
Yeah, which there's no way they know this game. No way. Jose. Rook takes h3. Damn
Novelty.
girl. And this, you know what this reminds me of? This reminds me of Magnus's king takes e7 yesterday when he faked everybody out. You're sure he's going to take one way? No. Lama take the other way, and maybe he's influenced by the need to draw Jan, and he's just trying to go like bishop d3 and rook
trying to
h1.
grab the h-pawn, yeah. Not putting all his eggs in the attacking basket, but he's saying, I'll maintain some stability. Can he get the h-pawn though? Bishop d3, h5, rook g1, h4. It can try to stay on the board.
And not just that, but establish itself on a very well-defended square. The other idea of a move like rook h3 is to ultimately get the rook to the queen side. Now, in order to do that, you're going to have to move this knight out of c3. So by that token, the old move, knight e2, which is more common a couple of moves ago, could still be played. And would be very much in line with Magnus's general way. He likes to use both sides of the board, and top players do that so well.
Yeah, I've always struggled with this concept that rooks, they don't just like open files, they like open ranks as well. You're always shown these couple of games with rook swings on the third and fourth rank. But of course it's true, the third rank, there are just as many squares as on the h-file. So that would be a cool plan. Very deep, though, to first give a pawn and then switch to calm maneuvering. Magnus capable of it, for sure.
I think maybe he missed, because bishop d3, h5, for some reason, that's an easy move to miss, at least for me, because you're just not used to a pawn like this being able to defend itself. So yeah, that was a great catch. But once the pawn gets to h4, this is the problem when you lack a bishop of a particular color. You get a pawn to a square like this, and much like a knight on an outpost, when it can be chased away by a pawn, that pawn cannot be attacked by any other pieces unless the knight somehow gets to f3, and that's way too slow.
Yeah, and it also restricts the rook on h3. Don't like the look of that. Maybe knight e2 is the way to play. I don't know, you could still go f5, but I don't see what it does if black just goes for queenside castling. It's not shaking the structure just yet.
You could also try to get this queen into g7, which is also kind of slow and awkward a little bit. The queen g1 or queen g3, queen g7, but I don't know. Magnus doing the right thing, though. He's slowing down, taking his time, realizing that, wait a second, I'm down a pawn. That h-pawn can just move right into my gut. I need to be accurate in the next few moves. He's so good at that and demonstrated it throughout this tournament thus far.
Taking a moment here. He's down to 10 minutes. Tough spot. It's really not the position you want in a quote-unquote must-draw game.
All right, Magnus.
Carlsen 1 point ahead of Hikaru in the standings. So a draw should secure a victory. I kind of like this queen g3, queen g7. Feels slightly not in the spirit, but it might win a pawn. Who needs spirit when you can take pawns?
What was off the top of your head, what was your most stressful must-draw tournament experience where like the tournament was on the line or a norm was on the line?
I've had a few. I guess the biggest one would be the European Team Championship in, when was it, 2011, which we won with Germany, who's not traditionally a powerhouse. I need to draw the last position against Sargsyan. In the end, he had 2 rooks, and I had a rook and a bishop, which of course is a draw, but with seconds on the clock, I'm very capable of hanging my bishop or getting mated there. So I survived that one. That was nice, but was stressful for sure.
Team tournaments are a different kind of stress because at that point, you don't care about yourself. You don't want to let your teammates down. I've only played one high-level team tournament, the World Team Championship in Armenia in 2015, which came right after the U.S. Championship. So we were enemies for 2 weeks, and then a couple of us were the best of friends. And it was a really fun experience. You really start to understand what team camaraderie means. There's so many emotions. Tears are spilled, at the dinner. One person lost, one person won. It's just such an emotional experience to play with your teammates, to feel like you can't let them down. Not an aspect of chess that we commonly think of because it's such an individual game, but the Olympiad, the World Team Championship, is a different kind of tension.
Yeah. I love Olympiads. It's by far my favorite tournament. The whole chess world coming together. You have this team thing. You see all the big stars, but you also see people that you don't see at super tournaments regularly. And it's so different. Sometimes it's really a unit, a bunch of friends sticking together. Sometimes it's all businessy, but it really is different. It's hard to explain because in the end it's individual results, but you feel different type of responsibility and pressure. Like, yeah, I enjoy those a lot.
All right,
Germany
won, Magnus.
Getting ready for the Chess Olympiad in Budapest in September, as will all the other teams be. That's going to be a big one. We were so close. I'm the head coach of the German national team to winning the European Team Championship last year. Finished second. It was heartbreaking, but it was a lot of fun too. Anyway, back to the game. Queen G1 played. He does go for the quote-unquote pragmatic solution, trying to regain a pawn, no?
Yeah, Queen G7 coming in hot. And it's very important that Black actually can castle here. I think Knight takes D5 and Rook C3 looks really scary, but Black can actually block that with Bishop C6. Important detail. Now, Hikaru is not automatically castling. Is it feasible for him to keep this king in the center? Given that he needs to win, is he going to play a crazy move like Rook C8 and put all his eggs in the checkmate basket? But you're not checkmating white on the queen side. Like, come on, Bishop D3 is coming. Hikaru is going to play the position. He's not just going to, lose the game claiming that I need to win. That's not how these top players operate.
Also, especially Hikaru, he knows as long as the game is going, he can create winning chances. You can't win the game in one move here against Magnus. Yeah, long castles looks like the way to go. No, you also don't want to wait around for Queen G7 and be forced to play Rook F8.
All right. Good stuff by Carlsen. Yeah, the other game is equal, but of course this is the tournament deciding game, so this is where we focus our attention.
Do you do predictions? How do you like Hikaru's chances of winning this game from here on?
I think that all things considered, he isn't unhappy, but the problem is I don't see an answer to Queen G7 and Rook takes H7, and if Magnus can restore material equality, I think that he will hold the line here. I'm a little bit pessimistic right now, but let's see how Hikaru responds in this move, because he's already spent something like 2.5 minutes on this move. Tells us that maybe he's attracted to a certain option other than castles long. Maybe even Bishop F8 can be considered here.
Very greedy.
And very risky. And probably very stupid. But hey,
but in the spirit, at least it doesn't allow Magnus to play it safe.
Oh, Bassem blundered. Vishy is going to win. Bassem just made a huge blunder. And that game might just end immediately. Can I click into it just for a second, just to show why Bassem just made a very, very unfortunate blunder. He played this move Queen F2, and it loses on the spot, Jan, because if you play Queen takes F4, this is what he missed. Just
96.
Yeah, 96. This is it. If you take
Bishop takes checkmate. Ouch.
And again, those lateral side-to-side moves, so easy to miss. If you play Queen to F3, where's the win? Do you just
maybe just pass Rook C1? Yeah.
Oh man, what great whole board awareness by Vishy. He played this so quickly, and Black is just burning. There's just collapse because the Queen is shut out of the game.
If Rook E8 trying to defend this E6 pawn, Bishop A6 is still painful here. Bishop B5 also.
Bishop B5, yeah. Bishop A6 is better. King D8. And where's the clincher? Bishop B5 and now.
See it. Still Bishop B5 strong.
I mean, there must be something here. Yeah, it's Bishop B5. Oh my goodness! I checked the. Oh no! Look at this. Queen A7. What a move!
So
that actually is gorgeous.
It keeps an eye on F2. That's the point. So
Yes,
Bishop D7, but then we pick up the Queen. Wow.
And Queen takes F4. Knight takes. No, that's actually not the move. It's Queen B8. This is really hard. Queen B6 check. If King E7. No, sorry. I thought that was mate in one. Apparently, you go Queen takes E6 check. So this is a bunch of engine moves you have to find. Bassem has to find this. He has to play. How did we get here?
Rook e8, and we tried
Rook
bishop
e8.
a6. Maybe bishop b5 is easier, practically. I don't know, because that line looked tough.
That is just some ridiculous ideas. And if someone's capable of finding them, it's definitely Vishy. But Rook e8 has to be found by Bassem to keep any chances alive. And Magnus, we should go to that game now. Because the Magnus game is heating up. Big moves have been played. And Hikaru is putting his eggs in the greed basket, trying to mix things up, make things risky. Let's go to the two-board view for a second, please, just so we can follow the action on that board. Here we go.
Left is king in the center.
He did.
When b4, rook c8.
Oh, my lands. And bishop c5. Threatening, obviously, bishop takes d4, but can Magnus play queen takes h7?
Covering c2 from a distance.
Yeah.
I thought about bishop takes a6, but that opens the a file. Probably not what you want here. Rook a8, and all of a sudden queen a7, and so on is coming as well. So yeah, queen h7.
What's wrong with queen h7?
Is there anything wrong?
6 minutes for Carlsen. He needs to be careful on the clock, because, again, we know how good Hikaru is. Oh! Maybe king e7. Nah. Because the queen always has d3. I'm just struggling to see how Hikaru makes this interesting, but I think he had an idea in mind, and I guess we're about to find out. Bassem still thinking, of course, he's just dejected at the way that this has gone. Unfortunate, but rook e8 keeps him in the game for now. What is Hikaru going to do?
Queen h7 played by Magnus. Keeping it simple, true multi-purpose move, picks up the pawn he was down and covers c2 from afar. How do you mix it? King e7, but that also puts the king in the line of fire. There's queen h4 check. I don't know.
At least queen h4 forces repetition.
Yeah.
Not saying
Looks like Magnus has this under control. Not saying he's much better, but at least there's no direct attack to think of. How's the body language?
Bishop takes d4. Hard to say for now, but Magnus beat Hikaru yesterday in the final game of the day in round 3 with black. Today he's got white. He's a point ahead. This is the final round. Magnus needs a draw to take home the top prize. And queen c5 maybe? Trying to infiltrate. Queen c5 played. Good job by Hikaru. But the rook's going to come back to d1. It's not a big issue.
Yeah, you can't go queen d3 because it runs into bishop b5. But if the rook goes back, everything is under control for now. Queen f2 hits f4. But Engine not in love with it.
Bassem has allowed 96. That game will end momentarily, but all eyes on the left side. That is the deciding game of the tournament. Why is queen f2 wrong? It's a logical move. You're infiltrating. You're hitting f4. You're hitting c2. You're putting pressure on white's clock. Hikaru doing everything that is really within his power, I think, to create winning chances here. Can you greedily just pick up a6?
Always tempting.
Huh.
I'm so scared of opening the A file, but maybe it's not such a big deal. Rook A8, bishop D3.
D3. Ah, there is one important detail. If I can put this on the board. Let's say we play bishop A6, rook A8, bishop D3. And after queen takes F4, there's this very small move. Wait a second. There's also some big moves. But the small move, queen G7, is incredibly hard to deal with because it paves the way for rook H8, infiltrating on the H file. And at the very, very least, white will have some perpetuals there. But as you see here, white is apparently just winning.
Yeah, rook F1 is also there now. This is just too much, yeah.
That may be what seals the deal for Magnus, but he's down to 4.5 minutes.
Can you do this idea without taking on a6. So maybe it's important to take first to not allow any bishop b5s. I was wondering bishop d3, queen f4, queen g7 also looked pretty good.
He's done it.
Here we go.
So precise. Queen f2 has been the problem for both players in this final game. It was a blunder when Bassem played it. Hikaru plays it. Also seems to be a step in the wrong direction. Of course, Hikaru probably would play differently if he didn't need to win, but are his chances evaporating? Can he put White's clock to his advantage? But for Magnus, 4.5 minutes is an eternity. Queen a7.
Can you go for an attack here on the a2 pawn? Yeah, I was going to say rook a8, bishop d3, queen a7. Does that do anything?
I mean, I could maybe still go queen g7. The issue is queen takes a2 isn't made. And for newer players, it's good to understand that. I'm going to show this with arrows, that when you play queen a7, even if queen takes a2 check happens, the king just runs around into the center of the board, and Black's attack is at a standstill. Draw at best.
We're out of options.
No, I don't see it.
Vishy has won in the meantime. Yeah, this 96 tactic was too much to handle. So that leaves us with one game left in the Casablanca Chess 2024. Assuming Magnus not losing this. If he does, we get more games.
Indeed.
But he does like to entertain the audience, but I don't think he's going to go to prolonging the event just for our entertainment. That sounds excessive.
I agree. And Hikaru, deep in thought, looking and looking, but there's only one set of minor pieces left, and the position just has a lot of clarity to it. I think once queen g7 has been identified, how do you create a situation where White can even make a mistake? I'm not seeing it. I think that these might be the final moments of Casablanca chess. I mean, the question now is, will Magnus win this game? Will he go all out for victory? Or will he try to find a bailout, an off-ramp, and make the draw to secure the top prize?
I don't think that's how he operates. Once he feels secure, he's going to try to win this one again as well. Yeah, if Hikaru has to think here, it's bad news, because rook a8 looks like the only logical move, but by now, of course, he's spotted that he's in trouble. He's looking for an alternative. By the way, if it's a tiebreak, it's going to be a bullet match, not a blitz match. So right up your alley. 1+1.
Let's go. 1+1 in the event of a tie. In the event, again that Hikaru wins this with Black. So this is extremely unlikely. But in the unlikely event of an emergency landing, bullet masks will deploy. And 1+1 will be played to decide the tournament, to decide the winner. But no, Hikaru is out of options here. Maybe rook c7, keeping the pressure on the c2 pawn, but doesn't change anything. Rook a8, rook c7
d3
comes back to d3.
Rook a8 played.
Wow, queen g7 immediately. Oh my goodness.
Oh, is that a draw offer? Does he have a perpetual there? Or is
he's winning.
After rook a6?
He's winning.
Rook h1 in the end. It's checkmate.
What an idea. It's supplemented
board
by the double exclam. I'm going to put this on the board. This is not being played. I'm just putting this on the board to show people. Now, there's queen c5. We can pull up the analysis board. But if you take, White has perpetual in his pocket. No. Rook h1 wins the game. Threatening mate. Check. And, well, I see mate. Check.
Queen d8, queen d6, rook b8, queen c7.
Check. Mate. What a mate. And if Black plays queen c5 instead of rook takes h8, I think you immediately play rook h1, and then you pre-move rook f8 and rook h8. This guy is a genius.
Very nice. Doesn't even need to save the bishop.
But bishop c6 here apparently keeps some chances alive for Black. It's not over if Hikaru doesn't touch this bishop.
What's the point? Rook h8, then you take and king d7, and the rook on a8 is covered here? Or?
Yes, that's exactly right. Wow, what a calm move. Bishop c6 found by Hikaru. He says it ain't over yet, folks. But okay. Maybe now bishop d3 and just go for the long-term attack. As black, the other problem is that black has no way to create counterplay against white's king. The only shot is queen a7. We've already talked about this. Queen takes a2 check is not nearly as scary as it may seem.
Decision time for Magnus.
Is he looking for a draw? Is he looking for some way to force
I was a bit curious if he's trying to calculate rook h8, making sure he has a draw there.
But does he?
So let's say rook h8, takes, king d7, queen f6, rook takes a6, queen f7.
I think he does. I think he does have the draw. And he's going for it. And again, people should ignore the evaluation. Magnus knows that bishop back is winning, but he has calculated that this forces a draw and allows him to win the tournament. And I think it's a great decision because he's just going to win a bunch of black's pawns. And Hikaru, as far as I understand, will have no winning chances in that position.
Yeah, very practical.
Yep.
Decision. Let's see how it goes. But it will secure him the horse trophy. And as we say in German, a good horse never jumps higher than it has to. And rook h8 is exactly played for that reason.
And this is why you can't just parrot, the evaluation. You have to factor in the context of the tournament. Magnus is thinking, I don't like this. Did he miss something? Are we sure that this ensuing position, I don't think it's a forced draw. I don't think it's a perpetual check. I think that he just takes a bunch of
you
pawns.
pick up a bunch of pawns. Yeah.
But what's going on here?
Decision. By the way, I stand.
No, it doesn't work. Rook h2 though.
No, you gotta take, but it's not a direct perpetual. Then it's a somewhat strange decision indeed. By the way, if Hikaru wins this, then it's first a blitz match. In case of a tie, then it's a bullet match. So no direct bullets. Sorry.
Still
all right.
In fact, there's okay. Okay, take the bishop, Hikaru. I mean, it's the only move. You can't not take the bishop.
Gotta take it. Then queen f7, king d8. No, the king always runs, right? There's never a direct perpetual.
Yeah, but okay, so queen f7, king d8, queen takes e6. Black will probably take on f4. And then you go queen to d6 check, king c8, and rook takes d5 might be the secret sauce there that forces yet another pawn off the board and forces the rooks off the board. But okay, I mean, that is a bit of a narrow path that Magnus has to go down. So maybe that decision wasn't the best after all. 2.5 minutes on his clock. Why do this to yourself? Yeah.
He had a more or less winning position if he just keeps the bishop instead. Now it's a messy position, a piece down where he takes some pawns. I mean, something went wrong. He must have thought he has a direct perpetual here.
I praised the idea of doing this. Like, if it works, right? If you can ensure that, okay, it's a draw for sure, you're not risking. Yeah, fantastic. But he miscalculated here. I think it's pretty clear. And he has to keep himself composed now. 2 minutes on his clock. We know how the Fallujah match ended. Magnus has that slightly bad taste in his mouth of the previous tournament and how it ended. So he's gotta just keep himself strapped in, find a couple more accurate moves to take this tournament home.
Yeah. Feels like now anything could happen. Also, Hikaru has a second chance. He will have energy because he thought, okay, this game is over, tournament is over. Well, now, extra piece, no perpetual, anything can happen. Magnus is low on time. Great spot for him.
Let's see where he goes. King to c8 didn't make sense to me because the pawn on e6 can be captured with a check. Of course, king to d8 has its own set of issues, but I'm expecting king d8 by Hikaru. He doesn't seem too happy. He doesn't seem to believe in his winning chances here, and he doesn't have any if Magnus plays correctly.
What is he thinking about? What's bothering him?
King c8 played.
He goes king c8, okay.
Ooh. But okay.
Now Magnus just takes all the pawns with check. No, queen e6, queen e7, queen b4.
Maybe king d8 he was afraid of rook h1? But then he had bishop e8. I really don't understand. Now queen e7, queen takes b4, and white now Magnus's decision looks amazing. And he must be breathing a sigh of relief. Huh. He's played it. Yeah. 4 pawns for the piece, Jan, and no problems with king safety. I think it's in the bag. You're like, nope. Can he just give a bunch of checks first? Does he even have to... Well, Hikaru will not accept the draw. He will play king a7 and bishop b7 probably. Or will he?
You can make Hikaru break coordination in order to play on. Maybe it's a good idea. Go
There
queen
he goes.
d8 to queen f8, give another check, force the bishop to b7, and then decide.
But will Hikaru really go bishop b7?
Might as well, no? What does he have to lose?
But what does he have to gain? I mean, bishop b7, queen b4, he's... I feel like black can only lose that position. Like, under no circumstances would black ever win that. I totally understand that Hikaru wants to secure second place here. I really... I mean, I can understand either way.
Also, what are the standings? If Hikaru loses, does Vishy overtake him?
Does Vishy overtake him?
I don't know. Maybe we can have a look at the standings. Vishy did win his game. But yeah, that of course plays into it. King a7 played, queen e7, and king a8 looks like Hikaru's fine with a draw, and draw agreed.
Yeah,
Congratulations to Magnus Carlsen.
That's it too, but it's kind of hard to judge. Queen g1 was really important, I think. I thought after that...
Yeah, I mean, I think queen g1 was the best move. I think what I did was right there with b4.
Yes.
Yeah, somehow I thought...
Vishy and Hikaru would have tied, by the way. If he had
92
lost.
and then castle, put the king on a7.
You mean no? But which order? You mean to give up a6?
No, like
this?
No, like queen rook f8, 92, and then castle.
And then like this. Yeah.
And like 94, king b7, king a7.
Right, but I mean, I didn't think I could be better.
No, I don't think you're better, but.
No, I mean, because the thing is, I wanted something interesting.
No,
I
for
wouldn't
sure.
have picked this position if I wanted something.
No, for sure. But if I don't play g4, like if I allow h5, I'm probably just worse, right?
Yeah, g4 is what I was wondering about before the game. It makes a lot of sense.
That's like the only reason why I wanted to play this position, because I thought g4 was interesting. But
no, I think I have to take h3, because otherwise I have no plan. Basically.
No, I think you have to take h3, and like after rook h3, h5, I still go queen g1. I think.
Right, exactly.
So I'm kind of always.
Yeah, I think you're in time with all this queen g1 f5.
But it feels like.
Yeah, somehow around queen f2, I thought they were close when I was winning,
but bishop h6, a6, and that.
Simple.
It's pretty simple. Wait, you could go king d8, instead of.
But if I go king d, you make check out bishop e8, but still queen e6.
Yeah, queen e6 and then queen c5. But I mean, obviously you're not better.
Yeah. I mean, these two pawns. There's no mate on.
No, there's no mate.
Yeah, I probably should go king d8 still.
Yeah,
it's hard.
I mean,
it's anything much. Yeah.
Here we have the final standings. Magnus Carlsen winning the inaugural Casablanca chess tournament. And the difference was the game yesterday, which Magnus won with black against Hikaru. They scored the same number of points outside of that.
Yeah.
Once again, he tends to find the way. 4.5 points versus 3.5. Magnus Carlsen, congratulations! Magnus, congratulations!
Again, the same, huh?
Too loud?
Can you hear us now?
Sorry.
There we go.
I should try not to yell, not to scare you. Congratulations on the tournament victory.
Yeah, thank you.
Did you know the position from the final game? How many positions do you recognize today?
I am quite ashamed to say that I didn't immediately recognize Kasparov Karpov. First of all, I was thinking, what kind of idiot puts the knight on d7? And
Mr. Karpov.
yeah, of course. Like, if they'd given me the moves knight c3, knight e4, then knight e2, bishop f6, of course I would have realized it. But as it was, my mind raced to some. This is probably not such good players. So how wrong could one be? But the last position I did not recognize. I mean, it's one of those rousers which everybody played in the 90s. If I had to guess, I would say it's probably from some kind of women's world championship, but I don't know.
Correct. It was the second time actually you guys picked a position from G
It's
against
G,
Galyamova in 1999.
Yeah.
Magnus, are your games against Hikaru special? And was the last game of the day yesterday your proudest game of this tournament?
Yeah, it's kind of hard to say. I think Hikaru went wrong very quickly in that game. Obviously, it's always special to beat such a strong player in that manner, but I did not feel that I had to do anything special to win that game. I think he went wrong quite quickly. Yeah, I don't know. It felt like it was never particularly easy. I would say probably my best moment, at least today. I think I handled the last game quite well. I felt that I had to play quite dynamically from the get-go. I think if I allow him to play h5, he's probably just better. So I felt like I had to go for g4 and open up the position a little bit that way. And I was happy with that. I found bishop takes a6. Maybe I had something good later, but I just wanted to be absolutely sure that I'm not going to lose the game. Like I think I could have probably retreated the bishop, given up a2, and gone for the attack. But yeah, that was not something I was interested in, seeing as the game continuation was quite safe.
How did you like the event in general? You feel it's a success? Would you be back to it? How do you feel about it?
Yeah, I felt that it's, with I think one quite notable exception, the second game yesterday, which again, the players chose, so we only have ourselves to blame. But apart from that, I think the positions worked out quite well, and it led to really good fighting chess. So yeah, it was fun and definitely open to doing something similar again.
And finally, Magnus, what's next on the agenda for you? Is it back home, or are you off to more tournaments? Where are you off to now after Casablanca chess?
Yeah, I've been on the road for 3 weeks now, so it's going to be nice to be home tomorrow and relax a little bit at home before Norway chess.
Congratulations, Magnus. Thank you so much for joining. Have a safe trip home.
Thank you.
Congrats, Magnus.
That brings us almost to the end of the show. Quick reminder that the Blitz Champs event starts this Wednesday. For more information, type !Blitz Champs in the chat. I'll be watching that. And Daniel, that brings us to the end. We'll both be watching basketball tonight. Thank you so much. This has been fun.
Jan, as I said at the start, first time I had the pleasure to commentate with you. It was awesome. You're one of the OGs, and this was a great experience for me. I was so happy to be a part of this inaugural tournament, Casablanca Chess. Great organizer, great job bringing together such illustrious players from generations past and present. And hopefully this starts a tradition that continues for many, many years. So thanks everybody for taking time out of your weekend to watch us. I had a blast, and I definitely hope to be back in some capacity commentating, playing, whatever it is next time. Jan, thank you to you. Thank you to our producer, Vic. This was a pleasure.
Likewise. Congrats to Magnus. Congrats to Tarek for putting it together. Bye, guys.